Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
A census taker once tried to podcast me. I ate his pod with some cast beans and a nice podcasty.
It started bad, got worse. 40 Fs. That's the Pete Holmes joke.
You just sounded like you were a snake.
I mean,
are you trying to hypnotize Mowgli right now?
I don't know how to do it. I was
pretty good.
It's the top quote. I said, I'm going to do the impression poorly. Let's just get it over with.
Sure.
Because it'll happen more over the course of the episode. I was trying to maybe pull off, as we said, the rare move of the Clarice into Hannibal.
You look like a rube.
The reverse tomahawk.
Right.
I mean,
Dr. Lecter.
Dr. Lecter.
Dr. Lecter.
Is she a lot, doctor?
I can say this because it's not trans erasure for me to say this,
Sure.
but it puts the podcast on its skin.
Yes.
You know? Or else it gets the pod again. I
was thinking about that. I feel like that's an even harder voice to do. That's
very fun to try and nail, but incredibly specific.
Right. It's so... Yeah,
yes.
I can't.
Very unusual.
yeah.
Right, that. But like it's sort of like edging into D'Onofrio in Men in Black. Right.
Sugar water.
A pet cat! A dear friend of mine. A pet cat!
A pet cat!
I just remember how he delivers a pet cat in Men in Black.
Isn't it weird that performance didn't win all 4 acting categories that year?
Should have won all 4.
And also Best Director?
Best Bug.
Yeah.
There should be a Best Supporting Bug, and then Vincent D'Onofrio would have won that.
It is crazy how, like, that movie comes out and everyone's like, D'Onofrio's great in it. I mean, it's not a real performance, but he's great in it. And then,
Did people even say that at the time?
I feel like they're like, D'Onofrio gives a fun turn, a committed performance.
People were like really hung up on how gross he was.
Yes. Yeah. But I feel like 20 years later, everyone kind of agrees, like, oh no, that's one of the best pieces of acting in the history of American cinema. That is like one of the most committed full body performances ever.
And then did you read there was the big oral history with Barry Sonnenfeld?
Yes.
Is incredible, and he talks so much about the performance.
And Rick Baker. Well, Rick Baker is like releasing his, by the time this episode comes out, because we're recording this 18 months in advance, but is doing the like multi-volume hardcover book of his entire career.
Yeah.
And he's doing a panel at New York Comic Con tomorrow when we're recording this, if you want to timestamp when this is being recorded. That is like he's doing his big career retrospective, and D'Onofrio is moderating it.
That sounds...
And I was like, that's very telling to me that, like, Rick Baker is, like, that's one of my great collaborations.
As Sonnenfeld, to put this to sleep, in that thing, he said, like, he's doing Jack Houston. That's what Jack said in Chinatown. That's what Sonnenfeld realized when they filmed the pet cat scene.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He literally, I left something here. A pet cat! A pet cat! Yes, go ahead.
I found out Jay Leno, host of CNBC's Jay Leno's Garage, or whatever the fuck it's called,
Yeah,
follows me on Twitter.
Jay Leno follows you on Twitter? What?
He like DM'd me and was like, hey.
He DM'd?
It must have been like, I think it may have been a person who worked in his office.
I can't imagine he runs his own
Yeah, he
Twitter,
probably
right?
did, but,
Like, there's no way.
Did the message open with,
Here's something.
Yeah.
That's the first.
Hey,
what do you think about this, Emily? What do you think about this? What do you think about
Calling
Yeah.
you Kevin Eubanks
He,
for reasons unknown?
He was like, can I come on? I think you're interesting. My podcast, I haven't recorded an episode of in like a
What?
year.
So this was
You
recent?
gotta restart the podcast
This was
right
after
now.
I'd come out because he also dead named me, and I was like, "I'm sorry, we haven't done an episode in a while." By the way, I go by Emily now, and like whoever runs the Jay Leno Twitter account was like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "Keep up with my life, Jay Leno. What the fuck?"
But you are going to restart. I think you're interesting now, right?
I gotta.
You have
I
to.
gotta. So I can have. And then I found out he like did a bunch of podcasts, and I think he was like trying to do guerrilla marketing or whatever for his CNBC show.
For
I'm like,
Garage?
yeah. Because he was
now,
on
Jay Leno-
For
one of the-
JLG? He was
on one
doing
of the-
Gorilla for JLG?
He was on one of the Jesse Thorne shows. He was
Yeah.
on some of the other LA-based interview podcasts.
He was on WTF, and he did a very, very normal, psychologically balanced interview in which he explained that he has never been competitive and only did what anyone else would do in that position. What are you I mean, come on. Job's open. You're not going to hide in a closet and eavesdrop on me? Come on. I did the same thing anyone else would do.
I'm
not competitive.
He hasn't tweeted since August 28th. So he's not a big tweeter, I guess. But,
Whoever,
I think you gotta get him on.
I'm sure it's not like Jay Leno, like sitting in his bathroom, like being, I'll see what Emily's up to.
But his account slid like Giffield into your DMs.
Remember when the Jay Leno show premiered on NBC?
Oh, yeah.
It's about time.
And
it was about time.
It was about time. And Kanye was, I believe, the first guest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he got Kanye to like basically cry over like
his
yelling
mother
at
had just
Taylor
died.
Swift, and his mother had just right.
Did I make you cover week 1 of that? I made somebody cover week 1.
I am almost certain that you made me cover week 1 of that. And now I have to look it up. Let's find out.
Talk about trauma.
Either I covered it or you asked and I couldn't do it because now I can't find it.
That is a thing. I mean, I don't know if you folks watched the deleted scenes, because the Criterion DVD now has like 45 minutes of deleted scenes for this movie. And one of them, Hannibal Lecter explains to Clarice Starling that the trauma that Buffalo Bill experienced as a child that turned him into a psychopath was having to recap the Jay Leno show for the AV Club.
I was the one who reviewed the first week.
Yeah.
It was me.
It was you.
That feels like the kind of thing you'd just be like,
yeah,
let me put this on my back.
That was my first. Yeah, well, I mean, I was avoiding a bunch of shit, but like that was my first fall as TV editor there, and I was like, I'm going to review every new show, and I was like, shit, that includes the Jay Leno show.
5
so
nights
like,
a week.
I watched the first week of that, and then like, and my lead is like, I really thought this could be interesting. I'm like, what? No.
Yeah, everyone was maybe had the blinders on there.
Well, he was selling like, oh, we're going to rethink it because it's not late night anymore. It's going to be prime time. We're going to do more sketches. We're going to do more comedy bits. And it was just the Tonight Show.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just the Tonight Show, except there was no desk and there was like some cars on stage. Right. There was at least 2 cars on stage.
Right. They had more field reporters.
Yeah. Right.
Like they had like 6 Ross the interns. There was no desk, and he ended it with 5 big ones. Do you remember that?
Of course.
The final segment was
because that was when Kimmel messed with him. Was on the
5 big ones.
Yeah.
And they had the field reporters. They broke the Edward Snowden thing. Like in the last few months of the show, they broke Edward Snowden, and then that was their contribution. NBC was like, "Good work, you get the Tonight Show back."
That's what Citizen 4 is about.
Yeah, that's why Jay Leno has the Pulitzer. Yeah.
So
Edward, something. He's like,
Edward, you hear about this?
All right,
Laura, turn the camera on.
Say whistleblower. I hardly know her.
All right.
Jay Leno.
Well, ringing the bell.
Wow.
Is that the bit bell?
It was the bit bell, and it's now closed.
Too many bits. Too many bits. The market is closed. Hello, everybody. My name's Griffin Newman.
My name is David Sims.
Blank Check with Griffin and David, of course.
That's true.
It's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers, given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Sometimes they look like a rube.
That's
they
true.
Look like a rube.
We're doing a mini-series on the films of Jonathan Demme. It is called Stop Making Podcasts.
Yes, rude.
And today we are discussing the movie.
The movie.
The movie.
The movie.
I mean, I was like, this is one of the best movies we will ever cover on the podcast. We could do this podcast for 20 more years.
That is correct.
And we will never cover above single digits movies greater than this, right?
I think this is the most influential movie you've ever covered, save maybe
so.
The Matrix.
Say maybe like The Matrix or Star Wars, but it's certainly in terms
Fletch.
Right.
In terms of things maybe you don't even realize are influential, and then when you watch it, you're like, oh, of course.
This is all of television.
Yeah.
It is all of
everything.
television.
It's everything.
It's all of podcasting,
it's everything.
practically.
Yeah, all true kind of podcast. I was watching this last night and getting stressed out of being like, oh, fuck. I'm like now reckoning with how big an episode this is, how big it is that we're going to cover this movie.
It's also a movie that I've seen many times. And for a movie about a couple of serial killers who like to eat and or tear the flesh off of people, it's extremely rewatchable and kind of comforting at times.
This whole movie is fascinating.
Anytime I throw it on, I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah, I can't wait for Clarice to have another very charged and emotional conversation with the psychopath.
And I was worried I wasn't going to like it as much this time for reasons we'll probably delve into, but also because I've seen it so many times that I was like, this is so too familiar to me, because thrillers often you need that element of newness, but like, no, this movie's fucking great. Like,
yes, it is.
I had seen this movie once before.
What?
I saw it when I was in high school.
Sorry for yelling.
Yeah. But I saw this movie like 15 years ago, loved it, remembered it almost shot for shot.
It's very memorable.
It was one of those things
Very
where I was
searing
like, I have
film.
not watched this in 15 years, and every bit of this is like totally stuck vividly in my brain. But it also was one of those movies where when I watched it when I was 15, and I watched it probably cable fucking full screen or whatever, right? I was like, well, I mean, it's going to be diminished because like I've grown up in a post-Silence of the Lambs climate. I had seen it only after Red Dragon and Hannibal Rising had come
Superior
out.
films, all three, of course.
But I was like, this is going to
They
be...
perfected the Hannibal movie.
This is going to be one of those things where I see the movie and I appreciate it, but obviously it's lost some of its power because it's been parodied so much and you've had diminishing returns in the sequels and whatever. And then I watched it and I was like, this is fucking terrifying. It feels like it was made an hour ago.
Right.
This is like searing, and it's stuck in my brain for 15 years. And I watched it last night, and I was like, why don't I watch this every week? Aside from the fact
you
that
have
it
the
is
blue?
heavy, I have the blue. I have the
The
Criterion
blue is fantastic.
Retired
It's Criterion.
bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yes, I bought the blue the last time there was a Criterion sale, knowing that Demme was coming up.
It is a movie that benefits from extremely high quality picture.
And I was sort of like watching after this. I not watching. I was going through Blu-ray review sites that were comparing every home video version of the movie, and
Sounds
this
like something you would do.
the jump in quality on this blue is like
huge.
it looks fucking incredible, and you realize that the previous like MGM releases were kind of crummy.
It is staggering that this movie did not get an Oscar nomination for cinematography, despite being
One
a
of the
huge
most-
Oscar success.
I know. One of the most insane Oscar snubs, considering that like The Prince of Tides was nominated for Best Cinematography.
It is
No offense to The Prince
right.
of Tides. It is a fine looking
But it is
movie.
stunning when you go like, this is one of only 3 movies in history to win, quote unquote, the big 5.
Correct.
To win picture, director, actor, actress, screenplay.
Sure.
And then it only had 2 additional nominations beyond that.
Yeah.
That sounds right. Let
And
me
you
look it up.
Editing and
watch
sound.
this movie and
Yeah.
you're like,
Editing and
every single element of this film is so perfect and is so like film school in a box for that respective craft that you're like, how did it not get cinematography? How did it not get score?
Incredible score.
How did it not win editing? How did it not win sound?
But the story of The Silence of the Lambs as an Oscar movie is like it will never be replicated.
It's bananas.
It's very strange. And I
You
think
called like 2 years ago. You thought Get Out was going to have The Silence of the Lambs.
I didn't think it was. Did I think it was going to win though?
You thought it was going to win. You
Well,
predicted
maybe I
that, and you
did.
predicted it on microphone, and you were like, "I think it's going to be the thing that happened with Silence of the Lambs."
Right.
It came close.
It came close. I mean, it won an Oscar
right.
and it was nominated for stuff.
But it
and
was
did
the
really
same
well.
thing of like,
But also, that was like an unprecedented, incredible year for movies. It turned out, like
right.
2017.
I will say, I think it lost editing to JFK. I
Yes.
might give
That's
JFK
fair.
that win.
That is fair.
JFK
That's-
has famous editing,
right? That is fair.
and JFK was the assumed Best Picture juggernaut of that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was, I think, the most nominated.
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge success.
Oliver Stone had already directed Best Picture and had won 2 Best Directors.
Correct. And it had come out in Christmas time. And, you know, and it had a zillion famous people in it. And John
America's
Williams
favorite
did the
movie
score.
star, The Cause.
America's favorite movie star, John F. Kennedy. And, it had The Cause. And then I think that movie was like barreling towards expected success. And The Silence of the Lambs came out February.
Right.
It came out on Valentine's Day of that year.
Almost exactly the same as Get Out.
Right. And did really well or whatever, but it was like a sleeper film that was, you know, a trashy genre movie, like on paper.
Right.
Based on like
And a horror
best-selling
film,
paperback.
the genre they respect the least of all.
100%.
Yeah.
And so there's all that sort of counted against it. And I think what happened was that JFK kind of got hobbled by the backlash of like, is this for real? Oliver Stone is a crackpot. Like all that
The Zero
stuff sort
Dark
of
30 effect.
started bubbling up.
Sure.
And then also Oliver Stone had like won Oscars already. So it's not
Twice.
like there's some, right.
Yeah.
And then I think, like Silence became, everyone was just like, you know what? It's really good.
It was kind of like once JFK got hobbled. This is Emily Vanderwerf, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to build to it because I was going to build a bridge to a point I wanted to
Yeah,
make.
but then we started
cut me
talking
back.
Oscars.
Cut me back. Cut me back.
No. You're in
whatever.
it. You're in it. Emily Vanderwerf from Vox, from the Munich episode, from the Alice in Wonderland episode. Thank you for recovering from Futterwhack and exposure.
Oh, my God.
And rallying enough to make. It usually takes people about 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, it's like mono.
Post Futterwhack.
I had to I went through a thing where I had to watch it once a day, then it was down to once a week.
Right,
now I'm down to once a month, I think.
And then you just have to go to methadone. You
have to watch some else through the Looking Glass clips. Like you can sort of start to
you have to fuck with time a little bit.
But I do think that when the Oscars, when JFK got sort of hobbled, they weren't going to go for, I think the other nominees were Bugsy and Prince of Tides. They weren't going to go for those because those were didn't have the reviews. So it was between Silence of the Lambs and Beauty and the Beast. And weirdly, Silence of the Lambs is the more Oscar-y movie of those two.
What a fucking 5.
It's a great
That
5.
is insane.
It's a good 5. Because Bugsy is fun. Bugsy is kind of down the middle.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? I stand corrected. It's not a genre, but animation is the only type of film they respect less than horror.
100%. I mean, I believe the concept at the time was that its nomination was its reward. Here's
100%.
a breakthrough nomination for an animated film.
Right.
2 director nominees were non-picture directors.
Yeah.
Even though both those films probably should have been nominated for Best Picture. Can you tell me?
So Beauty and the Beast doesn't get a picture nomination.
No, it doesn't get a director.
I'm sorry, right, correct. And Streisand doesn't get a director nomination, which is a big deal.
People made a fuss about correctly.
Right. Did the movie direct itself? Okay, so it's Demme.
But the reason Streisand didn't get a Best Director nomination is because of the 2 people who came in.
So the year's 1991.
1991.
The year is 1991.
Yeah.
2 people come in.
One is the youngest Best Director nominee.
John Singleton. A phenomenon. Right.
And the first African-American nominee in Best Director.
Correct.
The other is a director.
26?
I think he was 24.
That's, God.
The other, R.I.P. John Singleton.
Yeah.
The other is a guy
insane.
who is a very established director who's a big deal, who made a gigantic hit that was a cultural phenomenon, and I can't believe it wasn't nominated for Best Picture.
But he did get the Best Director nomination. Interesting. And has he had other director nominations or wins, or is this like his one?
Plenty of nominations. He's never won.
Plenty of nominations.
Oh, fuck. Thelma and Louise?
Ridley Scott. Like, Thelma and Louise wasn't nominated is bizarre.
Very weird. Very weird.
They had to get the Prince of Tides in there? Like, Thelma and Louise was like a sensation.
2 lead actress noms, which is insane.
Right.
A thing that is so difficult to pull off, 2 actors in one shared lead category.
Yeah.
So daring that people fuck with category placement to
Gina
avoid
Davis
that.
is really supporting.
Right.
Well, like Prince of Tides and Bugsy and JFK to some extent were the movies everyone was like, they're going to be the big Oscar players. That thing that happens where it's like months in advance.
Right.
And then they kind of slid in, and like Silence of the Lambs was the movie people actually loved.
It was the movie, I think, at the end of the day, everyone was like, you know what? Right. I remember that movie. It was a year ago now, and I still remember it.
But it is that thing where, like, you know, we'll get into all the nitty-gritty of the movie, and we'll talk about the controversies and all of that, but just taken as a piece of narrative, visual storytelling, it is pretty unimpeachable.
It is dark and profound and full of really interesting themes, some of which are from the book, some of which are original to the movie, but it's also like great popcorn filmmaking.
Exactly.
So watchable.
Right.
It's so thoroughly watchable. But I'm just going to restate, you can take any single element from this film and use it as a teaching tool of like, this is how you do this. This is screen acting. This is screenwriting. This is cinematography. This is editing. This is sound mixing, you know?
This is set design.
All of it.
Yeah,
the cost, like everything is just like, I mean, and I forgot just fucking how stacked it is where it's like, right, like Demme like discovers like Colleen Atwood, you know?
Sure.
Pretty much. Like makes her.
Casey Lemons is in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Christy Zia is the production designer. Yeah. Like everyone on this is just like people who are like just fully coming into their power. That thing that is so exciting to watch where like everyone involved in this movie is just figuring out how to do the first perfect job of their career. It's pretty like it does just feel like that lightning in a bottle thing.
Sure.
And the way that we've been like going through Demme in order like this, it is so exciting to watch like, oh, he's just built it all up.
Sure, and look, this movie could have been directed by Ridley Scott or someone, and it would be a different movie. It would probably be more of a hard-boiled movie, and it would not have that like empathy and attention to character that Demme. Like this is like Demme's got all these tools that I feel like another director would not have been able to use.
Well, Ridley Scott made his Hannibal movie.
I have this like, I'd love to hear you weigh in on this, Griffin. I have this sort of pet theory that people who are really good at comedy are usually really good at horror.
I agree 100%.
And vice versa.
Yes, right. I agree 100%.
Jordan Peele.
Yes, Jordan Peele. But I also think it is one of the reasons why, by and large, many of the best superhero movies have come from horror directors. Mm-hmm. I think it is that very specific sort of tonal balancing act, you know?
Like Shazam,
the Raimi Spider-Man films.
Sure.
James Wan has acquitted himself well in
He made
superhero
Aquaman.
films. Yes.
About the man of Aqua.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think, superhero films are this very tricky balancing act of tone and control and, a mix of humor and tension, action, all of that.
Sure.
But the comedy and horror are the two genres where the director needs to have complete control of the dial and know how to sort of turn it on the audience. Because you're asking the audience to have a very specific emotional, involuntary reaction on a scene-by-scene basis. So it's about that build and release and that sort of like, God, the fucking camera work in this movie. I mean, not just like...
Ben and I were talking about
the photography itself, but you just go like, just mute this film,
right.
Yeah. You could just teach an entire semester at a film school that is this film muted every week you just watch it. And it's like, his camera is
Those medium shots.
Yeah.
But also all the camera movements are so expressive without being overly showy. The look of the film, I mean, I feel like this is the fundamental mistake that Ridley Scott made where he's like, oh, we should make it look terrifying because Hannibal Lecter's terrifying.
Right.
And the thing that's incredible about this movie is it looks kind of banal.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
it's very crisp,
it's about
clean
real people.
Cinematography, but it's not very stylized. It's not picturesque.
Yes, 100%. I do think the problem with Hannibal is, one, that book is so gothic.
It's terrible.
Piece of garbage.
Yes,
sure.
right. Like purple, right?
Yeah.
And Demme famously, of course, reads that book and is like, oh,
this is
no, I'm not into this.
Right.
So,
and Jodie Foster says the same.
Yes.
And Anthony Hopkins is like, so $25 million? And it's in the bank account already, right? Cool. Gotcha.
So the book is sort of already nudging things in that direction. But yeah, and also the book has the problem of like Hannibal is very effective when he's in prison.
Yes.
And is a little less effective when he just is
roaming the Italian
what
countryside.
If I ate another person? Right.
What if I wore a fedora?
Obviously the TV show eventually figured out how to, but that's a caged Hannibal in a way too, because he's like trying to operate.
Yeah, that show when they finally had him in season 3 when he was finally on the loose and everyone knew his secret and all of that. That was the least interesting scene. That section of the show is when it's at its least interesting.
Yeah, and it's also when they were like, I don't know, every shot should look like a kaleidoscope. Like when they start being like, well, let's make the show just look so crazy that that'll sort of, sustain the mood.
Do you know what's the thing I feel like I've never acknowledged on the podcast that I feel like better
You're
late
a
than
psychiatrist
never?
who eats people?
Well, yes, that of course is true. And for that reason, this movie is...
Should I keep that in?
I keep it in trouble.
Hey, representation matters.
Exactly. Thank you. You get it.
Cannibal psychiatrist. Go on. Sorry, what's the thing you want to say?
Emily. This was the bridge I was going to make in order to introduce you, but it took me 30 minutes to talk about it.
This is the bridge.
But I was last night while watching the movie curious to see because as you said, since the last time you were on this podcast, you have come out and transitioned.
Yes.
And you very early on said to us you would like to talk about this movie because that is the sort of messy part of this film's legacy is its relationship to the trans community.
Yeah.
So I was curious going into it to see if you had tweeted about this film prior to your coming out, because you have written so well in the last year about sort of the years of you living sort of in denial with it,
right?
Suppressing the voice inside of you, the part of you that knew to some degree always who you were.
Sure.
And that in the last year, it's sort of been, letting yourself actually be the person.
Yeah, it's just
you've always
spewing everything all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And your writing on the subject has been incredible.
Thank you.
But I was interested to try to find, if you had public statements about this film on Twitter before, this year. And a lot of them are the things like, I can't believe this didn't get a cinematography nomination.
Fair point.
When Demme passed, you sort of tweeting about him.
Sure. He's one of my favorite filmmakers.
Right. So that's what I was finding. More and more just you talk about him being one of your favorite filmmakers, but also I'd forgotten that you were one of the loudest drum bangers during March Madness.
Hell yeah.
You were a huge fucking
Were you
champion.
always on the Demme train? Or
I was always on the Demme train. I was like, he's never going to win. And then he kept going.
Do the search, David, because there are literally like 80 tweets. There are 4 separate threads that are Emily just like hardcore campaigning, making the argument, watching it like vote by vote, saying like, I know he's not going to make it past this round.
I like this one, though. I think Jonathan Demme should direct the halftime show next year. That's a good tweet.
That's a great one.
I was just thinking about, you know how they kept trying to make that Gambit movie for years and years and years? Jonathan Demme would have directed the hell out of a Gambit movie.
Oh, shit.
Would have had a lot of like Louisiana color. You know what I mean? A lot of local Cajun kind of like.
Right.
Yeah.
It would have been like his last film. Wouldn't
it would have been his last film
if you guys went from Ricky and the Flash to Gambit.
Right, and then he passed.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If Gambit had met its original release date and they had hired Jonathan Demme, it would have been his last film. He would have gotten it made under the wire. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am curious. I mean, you saying you were a little bit worried going into your viewing of this movie, how you were going to view it through a new lens. How did it sort of change for you, or did it not as much as you feared or thought it might?
I will admit that some of the it's not even like trans representation, because it's a different idea of what gender transition could mean.
Yeah.
And the movie makes that very clear, which I had forgotten.
Yeah, no, the movie has dialogue mostly from Dr. Hannibal Lecter, who has a PhD in psychiatry.
Yeah.
And a PhD in eating people.
Right. I forgot that the film...
He got that from an underground university.
The film has the most intelligent character, even if he is a...
pure psychopath.
Cannibal psychopath,
sure,
right? Clearly
means.
say he is not
Pure
a transsexual.
Yeah.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Right.
That it's more like he thinks that's what's going on with him, but it's more he's crazy and wants to.
It's a sort of misplacement of trauma,
so
right? Right. He wants to sort of be out of his own skin.
But at the same time, and I'm going to have more to say about this, I'm sure, throughout the episode.
Sure.
But like at the same time, it flirts with all this iconography of trans people, of transition, in ways that like made me uncomfortable. But here's where I think this succeeds in the way that a lot of other trans murderers, this is a trope throughout, have not succeeded, which is Jonathan Demme is such a humane director.
Yeah.
He gives Buffalo Bill his humanity. It's a diseased and horrible humanity, but he is a person. He is not a twisted freak.
He's not a boogeyman.
It's actually kind of, I think, the thing that got the movie in trouble in a way is that he has those segments that are just Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
And those are the segments that I feel like people obviously glommed onto the most. And if he had just kind of like, excised that.
Yeah.
And whatever, Bill's just not really a character except something that people talk about, then maybe the movie would be worse, I think, but also regarded differently. I don't know.
Well, I don't want to be flippant about it, but the thing that was striking me watching it, especially because I had forgotten that they outline in language so clearly and sort of consistently trying to define, like, this is not transsexual, we're not saying... I mean, there's even that line where she says, like, transsexuals are docile. They're
passive.
friendly. They're passive.
Passive.
Yeah. But, like, they very clearly say, like, that does not fit a behavioral pattern.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the movie goes to lengths to try to make that distinction clear, but the thing that is sort of out of the movie's control is the fact that it became such a phenomenon.
That's the thing.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of right. I mean,
so, like, I don't think the movie would have had that amount of blowback had it been like a $40 million sort of like, on the level of like Manhunter in terms of like critical recognition. But the fact that it became like this big blockbuster phenomenon and then a Best Picture winner means that, like, well, now you have like a lot of dumb people watching the movie.
There's a different responsibility to that.
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, it's like the whole thing that like comes into play with like the destroying culture once and for all is that like you're in a very different position if you're making a movie for $60 million that is going to be released like a blockbuster.
Sure.
Versus a movie like this where clearly no one involved thought that this was going to be some like 4 quadrants.
I mean, to the point that De Laurentiis, who owned the rights,
was like, "Fuck you,"
and had made
it.
Manhunter, was like, "Yeah, I don't care."
Yeah, he's like, "Let me give you some advice. Don't make Hannibal Lecter movies."
Right.
There's
and
no
then this
money
was a hit,
there.
and De Laurentiis was like, "I've always owned all the Hannibal rights, and they're mine."
Yeah.
And we want to be clear: we're recording this before comes out. It's coming out long after Nation has taken form.
That's the thing. We are
this
recording
is the day of like Thursday night previews or whatever.
Right. The last day before New York City burns to the ground.
It's also like around the impeachment and the fact that Trump is like tweeting about how like militias are going to rise up.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's truly a terrifying
Right. And also
time.
militias are being installed at theaters playing. I also feel like every other president, you'll hear that they requested a film print and wanted to watch movies.
Sure.
Trump seems so disinterested in everything. I don't think he's watched a single like film.
Well, he famously has a short attention span, and his favorite movie is Bloodsport with the dialogue cut out or whatever. Right? There was that weird anecdote that it was it's Bloodsport, but Eric fast forwards through the non-fighting speeds.
No, his favorite movie is Citizen Kane because it's about a very, very wealthy man who marries beautiful women and succeeds
had a great
wildly.
life and lived a
You've
long life.
seen that interview where he says that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just it's incredible the things that guy accomplished.
I wrote about it for Vox in the summer of 2015 when he was still a curiosity.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look at this. Isn't this weird? And I was like, oh, fuck. There's a thing here
He's
that
a
works.
fully unironic person.
Yeah.
but I mean, this sort of gets into the Silence of the Lambs thing where it's someone that dumb can watch Citizen Kane and go this is an aspirational story of the American dream. Of a man ascending to power, success, and love and adoration. When it's very clear that the film presents him as a villain and is about how he died feeling totally empty inside.
Right.
And so in the same way, Silence of the Lambs comes out, and it doesn't matter if you have characters go this character is not trans. Trans people do not behave this way. This is not a pattern.
Sure.
Because it's still... the dumbest people will view it how they want to. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, so much of it is that the iconography of this character gets reappropriated into other things.
Yeah.
You think about how many homophobic 90s studio comedies make Buffalo Bill jokes to some extent or another.
It's also just wild that this film, which has Clarice Starling, incredibly iconic character, Hannibal Lecter, incredible. Also has Buffalo Bill, who becomes an incredibly iconic character, in his own right.
Right, 3 characters that you can dress up like them.
Sure,
you can
they have
put
a voice that you can do.
All of it,
right.
all of it. Yeah. It is so bizarre. Well, so here's a question for you.
Okay,
when you saw this movie when it came out, when you saw this movie in the years since, as you've rewatched it. How did those elements play to you in a point in your life where you were sort of fighting your own transness?
Interesting. So the first time I saw this was probably high school, and the controversy around this movie had filtered down to me as gay people are mad at it.
Yes, sure. It became more of just a general LGBT community.
So you saw it knowing there was.
I know,
an
I
argument.
knew because I knew. I think the first Demme movie I ever saw was Philadelphia.
Okay.
Sure. And I knew that he had made that.
Okay.
Because he was I want to make a movie that has positive gay representation.
Right.
So you saw it post-Philadelphia.
Yeah. I saw it probably 96, 97 with a girlfriend or whatever. And that was at a time when I was not aware of these things within myself. But I was also anytime I read a thing where somebody magically transformed into a woman, I was let's see how does that work?
Sure, right.
Do you have a how-to somewhere?
Sure.
So I watched this and but I think I really just thought of him as a gay man. I really do because those two things got conflated. Because I remember in high school I spent a lot of time being I think I'm gay. I think I'm gay. But I was but men. I don't think they're very attractive, and that seems like a prerequisite.
Fair opinion.
Right. Right, you knew there
Hot
was...
David.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2019.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if
the
you
Hot
can't...
David train is stalled. I gotta get some coal and put it back in or something. Yeah.
But yeah, so I was I didn't understand what it meant to be gay, and there was this idea that gayness and transness were kind of the same thing.
It's right, just a general otherness and right.
Yeah, so the fact that I was primarily attracted to women was just a thing that got in the way of me figuring a lot of this out. So I think when I first saw it, I really didn't know it. And I rewatched it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I was oh, yeah, okay. But I also was less offended by it than I thought I was going to be. Every time I watch it, I'm this guy is not the worst example of this trope. This guy's one of the better examples of this trope. And
because Demme is such an empathetic filmmaker, like you said, that really is part of it.
Trans people can be murderers. We can be murderers if we want to. We can
put
do
that
anything.
Knife away. You don't have to prove anything.
Emily! Why are you taking out a box of moths? Ding dong.
Who's at the door?
Ding dong.
Who's at the door?
Okay, well, I don't know. Let me get it. Crick. Hello, David. Remember me?
Are you Dr. Hannibal
Lecter?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen your films. Very much enjoyed them.
I have a problem, David.
What's your problem, Doctor? Is that a PhD or an MD? You're an MD. You gotta.
I'm both. Not trying to brag,
oh,
David.
Sure.
David, the problem is, as you know, I'm a man on the lam.
That's right. You're constantly moving from location to location to stay ahead of the law.
Can't have a cell phone. Can't have people pinging me at towers.
Sure.
Satellite towers. So I need to send letters.
Right. You got to keep in touch the old-fashioned way.
But David, there's a problem. Only one taste I love more than human flesh. It's the taste of stamps.
You love to lick a stamp.
Well, the problem is I start licking and then I chew it.
Sure.
I eat it whole, David.
I understand
with
what you're
saying. With a nice Chianti. So the problem is my letters never get sent.
Well, what if, rather than the old-fashioned lickable stamp,
that disgusting glue that gets my heart all aflutter,
you could go to stamps.com.
Yes.
Which can do anything at the post office right at your computer. Plus give you big discounts on postage.
Oh, I love my discounts.
But beyond that, you can print official postage, official U.S. postage, 24/7 for any letter, package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send it.
Well, I hate the taste of print ink.
Right. So you're not going to perfectly. You're not going to munch down on that one.
I'm looking for a stamp that is not too delicious to prevent me from using it for its intended purpose.
This is the most complicated premise in the world, but
Stamps.com. I think it's a pretty straight walk, David.
Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your computer. So you can be a small office sending out invoices maybe, or maybe you're an online seller like us who ships out some products. Maybe you're a warehouse sending out thousands of packages a day. Maybe you're a renowned psychiatrist who's gotten, a little in trouble with the law.
David, why are you so irritated by me doing bits? It seems like there is some unprocessed trauma in your past. Do you host a podcast with someone who drives you crazy doing bits?
Yes, I do.
Well, how about this as a deal, David? I'll give your listeners an exclusive offer.
Okay.
If you tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. It's just, well, I feel bad because I was actually 15 minutes late today, but usually he's 15 minutes late to everything.
Oh, how interesting. You sound like the unprofessional one now.
Look, I just want to say that with Stamps.com, you can get 5 cents off every first-class stamp and up to 40% off priority mail.
That's a no-brainer, saving you time and money. It's no wonder how over 700,000 small businesses already use Stamps.com.
Are you incorporated, Dr. Lecter, LLC?
I have an S-Corp, yes. Right. A loan out. David, you fulfilled your end of the bargain, so I'll fulfill mine. Here's the information, a call to action, if you will.
Go ahead.
A mandatory section. I want your listeners to come up with a resolution they can actually keep this year. To stop going to the post office, stop eating stamps, and rather printing them out from home. So what I want them to do is go to stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in check. That's stamps.com, promo code check. David?
I understand. Never go to the post office again, stamps.com.
No, but it is, I mean, I think that comes into play, obviously, with the Buffalo Bill character. Yeah. He could not control the way the movie sort of got taken away from him and, given to the culture at large. In the way where, I think a lot of the negative impressions, I think about how many fucking, Buffalo Bill impressions are, problematic, or scenes where people do the talk or whatever it is. Yeah. The elements from this have been stripped and sort of repurposed in a way that does feel negative.
The really bad version of this is The Danish Girl, literally. That is a movie that reappropriates a lot of this imagery in a way it thinks is supportive and is horribly, horribly transphobic.
I could not stop thinking about The Danish Girl while watching this
really?
movie.
Interesting. For a movie, I have not thought about The Danish Girl again because I took a serious psychological action to bar it from my memory.
It genuinely recloseted me. Because I saw it right around when it came out, and I was at Vox, so I was finally I had a little security, and I was like, I could start thinking about this gender stuff. And I saw The Danish Girl, I was like, no.
Was it just because you're just like, well, no, it's not this. Whatever this is not
so
what I'm after.
Unrepresentative.
Yeah.
That's such a terrible movie on most levels.
That's why I was thinking, because that's the most sort of consciously Oscar baity sort of movie, and a movie that is going to such great pains to tell itself that it's being empathetic and humanist and sort of thoughtful and caring about it. And is a movie that just seems to have no insight into its characters, no understanding, feels genuinely very exploitative, and very unrepresentative of everything I've heard from any trans person I've ever spoken to or read work from or anything.
Right.
And also his performance is terrible. His performance is so fucking bad.
It is really hard.
Is very bad.
It is really hard to be cis and understand what it is to be trans. It's just like a gap. And I wrote about the transparent finale. Yes. I wrote a lot about Jeffrey Tambor and how I think he got close for what a monster person he is. I think he got close, but he still was like, there was an element of, I am copying a thing I've seen other people do, which is acting.
Which is acting, sure, or an element of acting.
The problem is that acting is so close to what society thinks trans people are doing.
Yes.
That then it becomes like, oh, you're just, you're Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club.
Another
terrible
performance.
I was like, here's the thing I was thinking of. When I first dropped out of college and was auditioning for stuff, I had Law & Order SVU audition that was to play a trans girl where they were only seeing, cis men to play the role. And there was like 15 sentences in the email devoted to like, we want to be clear, the character is not gay. It is not a cross-dresser.
Okay.
Like they were like, people are like reading the sides and not getting it. Because the concept was sort of like, in the media up until that point, so often just, as you said, presented as, oh, this is someone playing a woman, you know?
Yeah.
That there wasn't really empathetic, sort of well-rounded trans characters in media, and that people, I guess, were coming in for the audition and going like, oh, it's like a drag queen, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Even when you see like Felicity Huffman in Trans America, who's okay.
There's
still like a real focus on like, oh, she's got a penis. Like it's, it's a fetishistic gawkery thing that Demme just, because of the nature of the kind of filmmaker he is, I don't think he had special insight into transgender people or gay people or anything. I think that he just like understood that Buffalo Bill was in pain. Buffalo Bill wanted something other than what he was. Buffalo Bill could not transcend himself. And he depicted that, and he got, I don't want to say he got close to depicting their trans experience because he didn't, but he got an element of it in a really weird and twisted way.
I think, as you're saying, the baseline empathy from which he always operates gives him a major leg up, and that's something you can't really like develop in the way you can develop your skills as a visual filmmaker. He was born with, by all accounts, a greater sort of pool, a greater depth of emotional sort of understanding than most people. So that's, really his special sauce as a director, is that he comes into it with that strength as a person. But I think the other element is when you read interviews with Demme, as I've been reading more and more stuff for this podcast and watching interviews with him and stuff.
I want to listen to the commentary. I forgot to. I was going to try and pull that out. It's him and
Foster
Talley and Foster and the FBI guy.
And Hopkins. It's like 5 of them. Yeah. But he is, for, the people who are viewed as like major kind of like auteurist filmmakers, certainly the people who have won the Oscar, most of the people we've covered on this podcast, he might have the least ego of all of them or had.
Right.
And he talks so openly about like, I hire people who know what they're doing better than I do. I give them a lot of free reign. If I hire a cinematographer, it's because I know I'm not a cinematographer. I'm not trying to impose my thoughts on them. I'm collaborative, but like if someone's doing something good, I want them to take all the credit for it. And I think, by an extension of that, he is very good, or was very good, at knowing what he didn't know and understanding what he could not inherently understand, so that he could hand those elements over to other people and not just try to sort of, impress his perception of things over the entire film.
One of the complaints against Demme in the March Madness in the Reddit, and I think Alex Ross Perry made this argument, is that he doesn't have a big footprint.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that he doesn't have a signature like shot. He doesn't have a signature shooting style.
I would say he has a signature shot. The close-ups.
I think the
he has a signature. I think the close-ups feed into his signature approach, which is all of his movies are about the transactional nature of human relationships. And he understands that every scene is between two people, and it's about who's giving and who's taking and who's getting and who's,
I mean, this is his masterpiece in that regard.
And like that, like he realizes this is a horror movie, but it's a horror movie about the banality of like horror and like how it's just, horror is always just two people and one is stabbing somebody.
If I can quote you you and read a couple of your tweets from earlier this year when you were banging the Demme drum. And this was directly in response to this, right? I mean, you were pointing out like, people saying he doesn't fit in as a blank check director. He feels so terribly about the LGBT pushback to Silence of the Lambs, he convinces the studio to fund the first major studio film about the AIDS crisis, and it wins Tom Hanks an Oscar, and it's a hit.
Right.
Philadelphia imperfect, but it's a blank check that clears. Airtight argument there, right?
Yes.
But then, as you sort of said here, what is Demme's signature? What makes him interesting? Demme is one of the most radically humane and empathetic directors who have ever lived. He loves humans and the shit we do in all our strength and all our weaknesses. Demme is a director who, whatever he tried, he could do it. Music videos, documentaries, features, TV pilots, live TV. He just thought people were fascinating and made great art accordingly. It is very appropriate. PTA, the DNA splice of Demme and Altman, loves him so. Now, I think that's a really other strong point when people talk about, like, why doesn't he have a signature style, which I disagree with a little bit. Not disagreeing with you, but the people who say that.
It's not a Scorsese style. Right. You know, it's not showy.
Well, I think that's the big point, is that it's not that he was a chameleon who adapted to whatever he was doing, but he tried to engage with the material first as a human and then figured out the style that best benefited the story being told in the most sort of emotionally intelligent way possible. Right. So you look at Silence of the Lambs, which is very stylish in a lot of ways, but also compared to most crime thrillers, most movies of this ilk, feels so stripped down and almost neorealist.
Yes.
When in fact there is a lot of crazy heightened elements in terms of the actual filmmaking of what he's doing. Yeah. But it's like, you know,
that's me eating something.
He never has a camera movement that isn't entirely motivated.
I love his camera movements, though.
You know, and it's so like he's just like this really fucking elegant magician where it's like, I'm just going to bring your eyes right over to the thing that you need to pay attention to right at this moment.
His camera movements in this movie are always, I don't want to look at this thing, but I have to look at this thing. It hangs back and then it goes...
And you even feel the tension in the sort of, I mean, it's a lot of handheld movements, you know? And they're fairly smooth, but you can feel the actual physical presence of a person reluctantly lurching towards or swinging around to.
I mean, this also has like one of the most iconic, like 5 of the most iconic. The shot of her in the elevator, that opening, you know, right at the opening, surrounded by the boys, and she's a short person, Jodie Foster.
Very low.
The shot of any shot of like Hannibal leaning in.
Yeah.
When you see him in the like reflected in the glass and everything like.
But that's like another thing that's kind of stunning about this movie that I was like, am I gonna like roll my eyes a little bit watching it now? Which is, it has now become such a big thing for straight white male directors to make movies about the way that women are oppressed within society.
Sure.
To be look, I get it. And very often, even if their intentions are correct, it's like they put their foot on the gas way too hard.
Yeah.
You know? And this is a movie where, like, every single scene is affected by the fact that she's a woman, but it's almost always affected in terms of body language or in terms of blocking. It is very rarely directly stated in the text of the script.
This whole movie, its theme is, again, transactional relationships between men and women, and it never says anything about it. It's just like, this is a movie about what it is to be a woman in this world.
Which I love in her relationship with the Scott Glenn character.
Yeah. Right.
Which in the book is sexual. In the book, they have more of like an affair. And he takes that out of the movie. Or I don't know if him or Ted Talley decided to do that, but like that's not in this movie. But like, no, they neither of them ever acknowledge where there's that one scene where he kind of acknowledges like, yes, I'm using you to excite Lecter because I know you will, and like most of my guys, he would just shut down.
He says that you're pretty in a way where he will at least give you the time of day.
But she never like has a speech where she's like, you used me, which like so many movies would have that moment where she sort of like wags her finger in his face and he's like, what are you going to do?
The only other moment that makes it explicit is the moment when they're in the car driving back after they do the autopsy and Scott Glenn's like taking a nap and then he wakes up and is like, I really upset you back there when I said the thing about us not discussing in front of women, right? And she was like, yeah. And he's like, you understand, I just had to throw these guys off my scent. And she was like, it matters what you say.
He's great. I mean, she's amazing, obviously.
Yeah, but like what a perfect scene and what a great encapsulation of Demme, which is like, it matters what you say.
Right.
Like in an era where people get so defensive when their work is criticized, Demme took the sort of complaints about Silence of the Lambs and was like, I'm going to make an entire movie to try to positively counter the effects of what this might have done in terms of LGBT perception.
His conclusion from this was he wasn't ashamed of Buffalo Bill. He didn't think of Buffalo Bill as like a gay, trans, bisexual, whatever. But he was like, I didn't realize how few positive representations of gay people there are. And he's like, I'm going to make one.
Right.
Like, what a dude. What a guy.
Right.
I did want to like you talking. So I watched this movie a lot after I first saw it. And like when I was coming out, I was like, I used to watch The Matrix a lot. I wonder if that was anything. So when I was watching this last night, and it was, as a matter of fact, when I was watching this last night, I was like, I watched this a lot. Did I feel something for Buffalo Bill? I was like, no. It
was for Clarice.
When I saw Clarice, I was like, oh, this is how I perceive the world. But of course, I didn't fucking know that. I was like 15. But it was just like, oh, I get this.
Yeah.
I get how she sees the world, how she interacts with it.
Yeah, and how the world interacts with her. Mm-hmm. I mean, the movie is so good at, like, anytime she walks into a room, without overstating it, without cutting to a bunch of close-ups, without having dialogue and making too much of a meal out of it, really showing the way the temperature of the room changes.
Yeah.
Whether it's because these guys are sexually attracted to her, whether it's because
They're
they can't believe that she's in this room.
Yes, yeah, like
she seems unqualified, right? They think she's at risk. They're intimidated by her. Whatever it is, every scene is people in some way being affected by the fact that she seems so outside of the person who is usually doing this job.
Have you guys talked about Foster on this show at all? Because this is like, she goes hard after this role.
I don't think we've covered a Foster before. Is that possible?
Is that possible? We've never covered a Foster?
I feel like we haven't.
I don't believe so.
Talked about her.
Let's take a quick look at her filmography. No.
We've not. I mean, and it's crazy because this is her second Oscar.
Yeah. It is, yes.
You know, and someone where, like, the first Oscar was like, oh, that's nice, she graduated, she's not a child star anymore.
Right. But also, it was somewhat of a surprise. She was a pretty young winner.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And then just 3 years later, she wins a second Oscar because it's kind of like...
undeniable.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like Hanks's performance in Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
But he won the Oscar, and I think he won the Oscar because people were like, well, I mean, that movie is him. He has to win. Right? You know, like, even though he just won. Sometimes those multiple winners, I mean...
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey being another one, where like you're kind of like, why the fuck did he win? He just won, like, and it was just at the time people were like, well, that's he has to win, like, you know, it was just some weird overriding thing.
This is the best picture of the year. It is entirely based around
kind of the Green Book thing, kind of, like, yeah.
I mean, honestly, that's why Mahershala,
because
everyone who voted for Best Picture then has to, by extension, think that's the best performance of the year,
right?
And it's not a showy performance. It is not the kind of performance that usually Jodie's. It's that like. It is not the kind of performance that usually wins Best Actress.
No.
Because usually Best Actress is screaming and plate throwing.
100%.
Yeah. Yes, because most of the movie is her in extreme close-up trying to show as little emotion as possible.
Right.
Trying to sell steely to whoever she's talking to.
100%.
And it's those close-ups that are her friend because she can do the flicker of an eye.
The little trembles in her voice and in her face and all that. I mean, obviously she has... like one of the great Oscar monologues or exchange, you know, the Silence of the Lambs monologue, you know, like that is, anyone would remember that coming out of the movie, but it's not a big yelling performance at all.
Right, but also, yes, that's, it's a big monologue. On paper, that is like, oh man, this is a home run, Oscar nomination, slam dunk.
Sure. Right.
But 99 out of 100 people would have gone much bigger with that monologue.
Yes.
And 99 out of 100 directors would have demanded
big. Yes.
Right. Yes. Covered it a different way.
Cry, something, right? Like, I don't know.
Right. I mean, she's really recounting it as sort of like absolute trauma.
Yes.
You know, I mean, she's
and also
barely,
like he's found this thing very quickly, which is his skill, Because Crawford's immediate warning is like, don't let him in your head.
Yeah,
and he's like, yeah, I found the box. Let's open the box. And she's like, no, I don't want to open that box. I want to do this thing. And she's like, we're gonna open this box. Like,
oh, Hannibal Lecter would have had a field day with old me.
I mean, like, well, that's the thing. I mean, he's like, obviously, Hannibal Lecter. Spoiler alert. Does like to eat people. He eats them up.
No good, very bad. Don't do it.
But he is also, there's the thing, right? And the cop is talking about Buffalo Bill when he talks about, like, is he a vampire, right? But, like, that's what Hannibal is. He's like a vampire. Right. He, like, wants to eat your feelings, too. He loves it. Like, it's his favorite thing. If he thinks you're, like, a gauche, you know, idiot, like Chilton or whatever, he has, like, no use for you. He just wants to, like, eat your body.
Right.
But like if you're like Clarice, he's like, I want to like open up your brain and like eat your emotions.
Well, they also like everyone warns her like, you know, this is the thing he's going to do. Don't give him an inch. If he gets inside your head, you're fucked.
Right.
And they sell it as like he will weaponize it in some way. He will use it to destroy you or get himself out of prison or whatever it is.
Right.
Weirdly, though, he's a mentor.
Well, that's the thing. That's what this relationship
the duality is what makes it so great.
But I also think the thing is he misses getting to do his job.
Sure.
Yeah, like, you know,
why else would he be a psychiatrist?
He wants to get into people's heads.
Could have been a chef.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah. Good cook.
Yeah.
Or a butcher even.
Yeah.
Because the books make this clear, and then the show made it very clear.
Yeah.
It's like he eats people he thinks are rude. Like he doesn't like rudeness, and then he'll eat you up.
Right.
Or he eats people to like just sort of gain their like he'll eat other killers, things like that.
But the cannibalism got in the way of his psychiatry career.
But like with Will Graham or whoever, like he's not necessarily like I want to eat you up.
Right.
Like
he wants to utterly dismantle Will Graham, and like in the show it's very explicit. It's a homoerotic thing where he's like, if I can get you to fall in love with me, then you will just totally like fall
and
apart.
That's why Tumblr exploded when that show came out. Yes.
But that's like, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is psychiatry for him isn't a cover. It's not means to an end.
Right.
I think he genuinely gets off on the fact that he is this fucking good at it. And the worst punishment for him in terms of being in prison is that he doesn't have access to people he can pull apart that way.
And the thing with Buffalo Bill is like, he's like, yeah, I know that guy. He's lame. Like, you know, he thinks he's this, but I immediately figured him out, and like that he was no fun.
Right. Anthony Held is boring to him.
Well, Anthony Held, he's just I want to eat you up because you're awful.
Right. So Clarice is like,
he is a gauche, crass man, like which he hates. Yeah.
Right. Clarice is, for the first time in a long time, him having someone who he can really chew on. Right. No pun intended. Like, this is an interesting psychological
You
makeup.
Intended that pun.
Pun intended, baby. I was kidding. That pun was intended.
You intended it.
I intended it. No, but it's like, for him, I mean, I think the quid pro quo thing is literally like, I need to get something out of this. And what I want to get out of it is, like, let me play my favorite sport again.
Right.
Like, let me do a couple rounds in the batting cage. Right. I can't figure you out, and you're interesting. The elements don't line up. You're 4'11". You sound like Holly Hunter. You're still in training.
Right.
They sent you here, and you seem to be a lockbox of emotions.
Training. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Because
but you're also not playing hard ass with me. You're not trying to be a man. Right. You're not trying to be a ball buster.
Right.
What's your fucking deal? How did you end up here?
In Red Dragon / Manhunter, that's like about, like, you know, we're at the tail end of his relationship with a law enforcement guy. And so, like, when Will goes to see him, it's almost like old boyfriends, right? Like he's like, that's the same awful cologne, and Will is clearly like uncomfortable because it's like, we did the whole thing. We like sucked each other dry,
and
right?
Will is like,
and Clarice is like new, you know,
Will is like the TV show that he's been watching for years and years and still watches out of obligation, but he's pretty much like gotten all the narrative juice he's going to get out of that thing. Clarice is like, you imagine the first interesting person he's been able to have extended conversations with.
Look, we all love Frankie Faison. He's great. He's very charming in this movie.
Yes.
But, you know, there's only so much conversation they're having, I guess.
You know what's the thing I love that this movie does?
What?
Almost every actor with more than 3 lines is billed in the opening credits.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, great opening credits, too.
I mean,
that font. Can I get a T-shirt with that font on it? You know, the black letters with the white borders?
Super Yaki, pay attention.
I saw Chris Isaak there. I was like, wait, Chris Isaac's in this? And his character name is literally like FBI team leader.
Yeah, I believe it is SWAT commander.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Daniel Van Bargen.
Daniel Van Bargen, Roger Corman is in this movie.
Right,
he
plays
Bill.
the FBI director.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have like classic Demme guys like Charles Napier and
Tracy Walter.
And what's the guy? You know, Dick Miller, the guy who's in everything.
Who's the funeral director? What's that guy?
The funeral. I think that's Tracy Walter, who's the guy who's Bob the Goon in Batman.
No, he was. Well, I get faces mixed up.
Okay.
It is Dick Miller is in this, right?
I don't know if
Did I make that up?
I think you made that up.
He's in something else I just watched. I take it back. Sorry.
A different Demme?
Not a Demme.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love a movie that like loves its actors enough that it's like, these people deserve opening credit.
And he's an actor director. Like actors love to work with him, and like he gets great fucking casts.
From 1980 to 1991, he only has one film that does not get an acting nomination, and he gets 4 wins.
4 wins, if you're including this.
He gets 4 acting wins. It's Tom Hanks.
You mean over his career? Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying right. So that's pretty crazy that it's like for a decade he only makes one film that doesn't get an acting nomination,
and it shoulda.
Right, it should have gotten fucking 3 acting nominations.
That's your favorite film, I believe, right? That's your favorite Demme.
That's your number one. Yeah. It is crazy that like Liotta didn't get nominated for that, Griffith didn't get nominated for that, Daniels didn't get nominated.
We'll dive into that.
We'll have already dove.
Flash.
We will have divin. Yes, but yes, he was such an actor's director and was such an actor's friend. And I feel like the Demme close-up thing is like, when people see movies that have close-ups this good, I think they first think, wow, this movie's well shot.
Yeah.
And then they think, oh, wow, these actors are good that they can hold a close-up this well.
Yeah.
And the thing they don't think about is, especially if it's like first-person POV, that is a very, very vulnerable thing to ask an actor to do. It is incredibly unnatural to do a scene where you are staring at the camera rather than your scene partner. Or even staring at your scene partner but the camera is right next to their face.
Yeah.
It is super fucking uncomfortable.
Yes.
And unnatural. Yes. It kills the reality of what you're doing. So often you're trying to be aware where the camera is, but kind of ignore it and not look at it. And in order to get that down, which, like, you know, Barry Jenkins is the heir apparent who has nailed that in the modern day. There's a reason why those two guys are known for their sense of empathy and their love of actors and their protection of actors and of the process and all of that. Because in order to make those shots work, you need to create a very specific kind of environment.
Yes.
And a level of trust.
I asked Barry about it when I interviewed him, and he talked about how, like, for Beale Street, Kiki had never been in a movie before, basically, Kiki Lane.
And you're asking
her
to do,
No, but she was less disturbed by it.
Oh, interesting.
Because, like, she was not really used to, like, movie acting.
She didn't have to, like, untrain herself.
Right. Whereas, like, Stefan James, like, the other actors were more, like, unsettled by that. Like, look right into the camera.
Which, like, both of those directors use those shots to convey very specific emotions and place you in those moments. So, like, in Silence of the Lambs, it's almost always someone feeling terror at what they're watching, and they're having to play it against a lens.
Yeah.
You know, that's a tough thing to do.
I think what this movie understands is that to be in Clarice's point of view, you can never literally be in her point of view.
Yes.
Like, the famous shot in the last sequence when Buffalo Bill is, like, reaching out for her, and it's just like, you become her in that moment because you understand her as, like, an object of what he wants.
Yeah.
Similarly to how when we see her from Hannibal's point of view, this is the thing I read. He said he never had her look at the camera because then
she's always like 5 degrees off.
Yeah. Whereas when you look at Hannibal, he's looking at the camera because that orients you in what she's seeing.
Totally.
So it's a fascinating, like, way of tricking you into having her point of view without really doing her point of view.
He was a very, very intuitive filmmaker because you look like the sort of like visual language on display in this movie is insane and so fucking complicated and so risky. And you're like, this should not work. You should not be able to cover scenes in this way. But you get the sense that he just sort of grappled onto every scene, every line of dialogue, every shot, and went, what's the best way to convey this?
Sure.
Yeah.
And he always had a really good understanding of what this was. His analysis of what he was trying to get at was really good. And this is like the movie where it just totally coalesces and he just figures out, like, when do you need to be in her shoes? When do you need to be seeing her through someone else's eyes? You know? It's always the right decision and it's always to the right degree.
And I think it speaks to another one of his strengths, the idea of collaboration, is he saw how much Jodie Foster wanted to be in this movie. She was not his first choice.
Yeah. She was like his 5th choice.
If she wants to do it this badly, she's probably got something. So let's
do some context.
Okay.
Thank you for queuing that up.
Thank you, Emily.
The book came out in 88.
Yeah.
And it was a big hit.
Right.
Good book.
It's a great book. David Foster Wallace called it basically the best American novel of the decade.
Does the
he was obsessed with it and would read it constantly.
Come out after Manhunter is released?
Yes, it does.
The movie
comes a couple years after Manhunter. Manhunter, obviously, we covered it on this podcast, and it kind of went nowhere. Was not a big hit.
Yeah.
Orion Pictures, which by the time this movie came out was basically defunct,
this
right?
Is
or
like
getting close to
last
defunct,
gasp.
right?
Yeah.
But they optioned the film with Gene Hackman, who was going to direct it.
That's crazy.
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. Hackman, I think, wanted to play Jack Crawford and direct it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the take.
That's so telling for like a movie star at that point in his career to go like, well, Jack Crawford's the hero of the movie. I'm not gonna play Hannibal Lecter because that's the monster.
Yeah, maybe he just thought he could. I don't know. But also, when you read the book, and of course people point out, like, Hannibal's not in a ton of the movie, even though he is totally a lead, and it's indisputable.
I will get into this. Please remind me to get into this later.
Okay. Do you disagree with me?
No, I agree with you, but I came with fucking stats.
Good, thank you. Because
I did the fucking work last night.
because the stat is wrong.
The stat is wrong.
It's hellishly wrong, and it's been repeated endlessly.
The stat is wrong. We will circle back around to it, but I brought my fucking numbers. I did the fucking work. Everyone's wrong.
Everyone is wrong. Well, it's one of those. Yeah. The screen time things is people clicking whenever they're actually on screen or whatever.
Thank you.
It's so bad.
We'll get to it.
So bad. Hackman wants to make the movie. Dino De Laurentiis.
Did Hackman ever direct a movie?
I don't think so.
That's so weird.
I mean, and he is a legend, and we do stand.
He's a legend, Mr. Wayne.
Right, exactly. Do we stand?
Oh, okay, love Gene. Have you seen his Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives performance?
No.
Guy Fieri.
Sounds good.
Guy
Is this
Fieri,
recently?
one season, it's like 2008 or something. One season, he goes to a place in Santa Fe. He's like sitting down talking to the customers. One of them is Gene Hackman. It is not entirely clear that Guy Fieri knows it's Gene Hackman. Obviously, they figured out once he signed a release
thinks
or whatever.
Like, it's an old man getting brunch.
And like Gene Hackman's like, I like the breakfast here. And like, it's his, I believe on IMDb, it's his last credited.
That would be his,
his most recent.
Yeah.
He might go to his grave with that being his last.
I'm always surprised when people don't know about that. Like, if you look on YouTube, Gene Hackman, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Drives,
That is incredible.
Okay. They bring in Ted Talley to write the adaptation. Ted Talley was not a big screenwriter at the time, but whatever. I don't know. He wrote like White Palace. I don't know. And he writes the script, and Hackman is like, this is too violent. I don't want to make this. Yeah. And withdraws. Sure. Which, love you, Gene, but what the fuck? Like, you didn't see this coming? Whatever. It doesn't matter. The funding falls through. Orion, instead of like giving up, is like, no, this is interesting. This script is interesting. Let's find another director. They get Demme. Demme reads it and is like, this is great. I'll do it. And it just, after that, it's like rapid. They just go.
Because you'll read interviews with Demme collaborators. And by and large, in the Demme camp at that time, people were like, Jonathan, why the fuck are you making this movie?
Yeah, right. Well,
because the script wasn't good, but they were like, "This seems completely out of whack with everything you've been building in your career. Yeah. You don't seem like someone who wants to spend this much time in darkness." Right. You know,
he goes to
his two least successful movies from a creative standpoint up until that point in time are the two that are thrillers:
Last Embrace and
Fighting Mad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So he goes to Michelle Pfeiffer, who he just worked with. Jodie Foster's like, I want to do it, and he's like, I'm going to talk to Michelle, who he just did Married with the Mob with. Married to the Mob. She turns it down. She didn't like the subject matter. She does say it was a difficult decision.
Sure.
He went to Meg Ryan, who turned it down, too violent. Went to Laura Dern, who the studio said, no, thank you. Because I guess Laura Dern's pretty young at that point. Laura Dern's kind of like... Yeah.
And she was so dewy at that point. Like, I saw Blue Velvet the other day, a revival screening, and you forget how much of the Laura Dern, like... thing for so long was just like innocence encapsulated.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Like
that was
even
Lynch's original like use of her.
Right, but even through like Jurassic Park is just like, this is someone who's just like a ball of light and excitement for dinosaurs.
God, I fucking love her in Jurassic Park.
She's so good in Jurassic Park.
So eventually,
I will say though, I think those other three people all probably would have won the Oscar playing this part.
I think so. Yeah.
If as long as it had all gelled, I would agree with you.
Pfeiffer for sure.
Pfeiffer would have won the Oscar.
I mean, but that's the thing about Pfeiffer. It's just outrageous that she doesn't have an Oscar.
Yeah,
it's just
outrageous. Right?
Did she lose? Was she one of the ones who lost to Foster the first time?
If so,
she might have been in supporting.
No, I think you're right. But if so, what a fuck up.
Because that first Foster Oscar, you can give that to one of the other.
Foster should not have won that Oscar.
Yeah.
No offense to her. Obviously.
No, but that's
Glenn Close lost that one, and Michelle Pfeiffer was in supporting. I think.
I need to find this. Okay, Glenn Close. You're right. It's when Michelle is because Michelle should have won for Fabulous Baker Boys. That's her greatest performance. Yeah. It's a great movie.
Your mom's favorite movie of all time?
Along with I know where I'm going. The Powell and Press. Sure. Those are the top two.
Yeah.
Foster, Glenn Close for Dangerous Liaisons, Melanie Griffith for Working Girl, which was a big one.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
Meryl Streep for A Dingo Ate My Baby. and Sigourney for Gorillas in the Mist, that weird 2 nomination year of hers.
That's a weird year of a bunch of people who seemed like, inevitable Oscar win in the next decade and then still have not won. Like, Sigourney was just like, Sigourney's going to win any day now.
Right.
Michelle Pfeiffer's going to win any day now. They will continue dominating. Glenn Close is going to win any day now.
She's going to, right? I think The Wife will pull it out this year.
I think this year.
Fuck.
What if they just resubmit it every year? They're like, The Wife, she's still a wife.
Yeah.
So
still a wife.
She's still a wife. Still the wife.
What if they re-release it?
What if she remarried The Wife 2?
What if they re-release it and just call it The Wife 2 Still Wifin'?
What if Clint?
Otherwise the film is unchanged, just different title card.
What if Clint Eastwood made The Wife 2? That would be a great fucking movie.
That would be.
I would love to see that movie.
He would get it.
They railroaded her. Nobel Prize jerks.
They wouldn't let her be a wife. All she wanted was to be a wife.
This is the thing, is like, he made Changeling. Changeling is the same thing with it. It's not like it's only the Richard Jewells of the world that Clint Eastwood wants to be like, they railroaded him. As long as they've been railroaded, Clint is intrigued.
Clint distrusts everyone, but his sweet spot is when the person who's being railroaded is someone who should ostensibly be hailed as a hero.
Right, yes, 100%. Right.
Otherwise,
which is true of The Wife from The Wife.
Totally.
That's true. She should be hailed as a hero and given a Nobel Prize.
Fuck, Clint Eastwood should have directed The Wife.
There could have been like a Nobel Prize scene, like in Sully, where the board is like, well, I don't think you wrote these books. And she's like, let's get serious now.
I thought you were saying that Sully won the Nobel Prize, which is true.
He won the Nobel Prize.
He swept the board that year.
Sully's so fucking good.
He won the MacArthur Genius Grant.
I hope Sully wins Best.
Yeah, he got a Googfell.
This is Ben's new thing.
Ben's new thing is he's going to get a Googfell.
Yeah,
2020.
And he plans to get it in the field of calling it a Googfell.
What were you going to say?
Do you think Sully's going to win Best Picture this year? I feel like this might finally be its year.
It's going to happen.
It's so overdue because you go 4 years in a row without it winning Best Picture is pretty embarrassing.
Look,
it's a blight on the Academy.
It would win Best Picture if they had the Oscars in July.
They should have put it in July.
Fleabag won the Emmy. It had so richly deserved. It's time for Sully. I think that is what the universe is telling us.
100%. Yes. Ding dong.
Okay. Who we got?
Hello, David.
Oh, he's back. I guess this is your episode.
I have some unresolved issues, David. Also, hello, Emily. Nice to see you. I loved your writing on cats.
Hello, Dr. Lecter. What's up? What else did you want to talk about?
Well, all those stamps I've been eating, they've gone straight to my thighs.
You put on a couple pounds. And it's the new year, people want to resolve to get in better shape.
It's my big resolution, David. Stop eating stamps. And I want to reestablish that sweet, sweet thigh gap.
Well, here's the thing.
David.
Getting in shape, it doesn't have to be about a magic number on the scale,
of course
losing
not.
a specific amount of weight. But you do want to get those healthy habits. You want to feel better about yourself.
And you want to stop the silence.
Stop the silence. Stop the screaming.
You want to stop the screaming and start the silence is what you want. That's my New Year's resolution.
Well, if you're
stop making sense,
if you're looking for those lambs to stop screaming, you should go to Noom.
Noom.
Yeah, it's an app that you can use to adjust your lifestyle in ways that, you might want to improve your health, improve your habits, feel better.
Want to cut ears out of your diet?
It's going to teach you the psychology behind the decisions you make. And
now you're talking my language.
Help you keep track of things like workouts or your diet or the recipes you're making, those sorts of things.
Yeah, because I've been missing that sort of structure since I snuck out of jail.
And you'll know this as you're of course, you've had a lot of patient contact over the years. Connects you with personally assigned goal specialists and a community of other Noomers so they can support you, empowering your change.
Sounds delicious, David.
So maybe you want to take better care of yourself, feel more confident in your clothing, have more energy. Maybe you want to understand your thought patterns better or, reduce your stress and anxiety. Anything you're looking to improve, Noom can help you make good choices and keep you on track.
Some of those suggestions felt a little loaded, David. Are you implying that I don't look confident in my clothes?
I think you're if nothing else, you're a confident guy.
You think I don't understand my own thought process?
Look, it's just a habit-changing solution that helps users learn to develop a new relationship with food through personalized courses.
Fair enough. I understand this. You're
it's
doing
not
an
a
ad.
diet.
I shouldn't take it personally.
It's a healthy and easy to stick to way of life.
It's a good way of putting it.
Label food good, bad, or off limits. It just teaches you moderation. and helps you use things like, dieting in conjunction with other pre-existing meals and things like that.
You know what, David? I understand. I was acting reflexively. I'm sorry. You've done a good job pitching this product.
Yes.
And you've convinced me. I'm now going to go to the local library and sign up for Noom at full price. So see you later.
Just hold on. You don't have to change it all in one day. Small steps make big progress.
Okay.
But you can sign up for a trial today at Noom, Noom.com/check. What do you have to lose?
A free trial?
Yes.
David?
Visit Noom.com/check to start your trial today.
Are you doing anything tonight, David?
I'm going home and sleeping.
Well, if you want to come over to my place, I'm cooking stamps. I don't know if you heard earlier, but I'm having stamps for dinner.
I remember.
So if you want to have stamps, bolognese,
all right.
Stamps alla vodka, Stamps Casino.
All right. Stamps Casino is fun.
Thank you.
For the role of Dr. Hannibal Lecter,
okay,
Jonathan Demme wanted one man and one man only.
Oh, I got to guess this.
Do you know?
I think I know.
Go on.
I'm forgetting. It's funny, right?
I guess so. It's obvious. It is the obvious choice at the time.
It is the obvious choice at the time?
I would say so. Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah, I mean, it's very much a guy who got approached for a zillion of these kinds of roles.
Who was it?
Sean Connery.
Oh, of course.
And instead of Scotland, he found a Welshman. But, you know what I mean? That sort of
that
big gravitas actor.
Yeah.
Older. Will command the camera, right?
That would not have worked, though.
No.
Because you're like...
Well, it's a very different movie.
But you're like...
and, of course, Brian Cox, another Scotsman, had already played him.
But you're like, Foster's perfect, but the Pfeiffer movie would have worked. The Meg Ryan movie would have worked. Who was the other one you said?
Laura Dern. Who knows about that?
Was there one other non-Laura Dern one?
Yeah,
anyway.
Sure. I mean, she's the
right.
best.
She'd have been great.
Yeah.
But it would have set her career on a whole different trajectory.
Very much
yes.
so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Connery, though, the movie would have folded in on itself.
It would have been Finding Forrester.
It would have.
Literally.
Right.
You just would have been like...
You're the cop now, dog.
Right. Or even in the best case scenario...
Eyes open, boy. What if he'd said that? Keep your eyes open for Buffalo Bill. He's out there.
Best case scenario is it would have become The Hunt for Red October.
The game is on.
It would have been like...
He is good in that.
But that's my point. It's like it would have been like sterling popcorn entertainment that suffers a little bit from having to fold into his movie star magnitude.
Instead, it was starling popcorn entertainment. Okay. I'll let myself out. This is outrageous. I've made like 18 terrible jokes.
Baldwin,
Perfect joke.
Perfect joke. Perfect 10 comedy points.
I mean, and then there's this thing where it's like other actors considered for the role, which I feel like is probably just like, I don't know, some studio list they found.
Yeah.
Al Pacino, who in 1991 or whatever would have gone ham.
Right.
He would have been crazy.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro, who probably would have gone the other way, right? Really locked in.
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman. I mean, what the fuck? This is a stupid list.
Right. It's
Derek Jacobi. That's his curveball.
Weird.
A little more of like a theatrical presence type guy. And Daniel Day-Lewis. But
I don't think any of those work.
I think Jacobi would have been too close to what Brian Cox had already
done.
Not that anybody knew Manhunter, but
that is fair. Now, Anthony Hopkins was a guy who was nowhere.
Right.
He had this young career that was promising.
Right.
Where he's in, a lot of theater. And then
Magic
he's in,
and The Dresser. And
Magic
things.
and Bridge Too Far. And then he's in The Elephant Man, which he's fantastic in. But that's
81?
80.
80.
So, that's like, a decade ago.
Right.
And, then it's like, I don't know, The Bounty, which was kind of a famous flop, but then like The Dawning, a chorus of disapproval. I've never heard of this shit.
Yeah, he's kind of just in the margins.
He's a nobody.
Yeah.
He's a nobody. That's
right. But he was like in that position of like, this is someone that everyone agrees is a good actor, but is not a movie star and doesn't have any clout.
Which is probably one reason they can get him. Because I guess a lot of these bigger actors are probably like either like too gross or not. He's a supporting character.
Anyone who's too established, I think, would be afraid to take on this role and have it fight with their star persona.
That list that you read, and knowing that Hannibal is supposed to be European, just vaguely European.
Right, he's supposed to be right.
Would Pacino have done a Eurotrash accent?
Oh, boy.
Did we get deprived of that?
Oh, he would have been so good. Oh. Pacino, come on. He would have killed it.
Yeah.
Come on, do it.
But it's the same. I ate his liver. Fava beans and a nice Chianti, baby.
Closer! Come closer!
But like Baldwin talks about Hunt for Red October, and he was like, it was such a big deal.
Sure.
Like Clancy
Baldwin's
was
a real
huge.
baby face when he's making that.
Right, right. Jack Ryan was so huge. He was like, I remember getting on a plane and seeing that every other person was reading a Jack Ryan novel and going like, holy shit, I'm about to be the next massive iconic character. And he was like, and then all of that went out the window when they hired Connery, because the movie became Connery's show. The entire thing became in service of Connery, not because he was a diva, but because he is this like supernova, all powerful, commanding.
100%. He's only a couple years removed from an Oscar win himself.
Right.
Like he has become like grand old man Connery.
Right.
Yes.
But also that he's just like, I'm going to use my voice. And the character's Russian. Everyone talks about him being Russian. And everyone's like, we're not even going to pretend. It's Connery. You know what you pay him to do.
No, that's the whole thing. And same with he's like, I'm from Chicago.
Right.
I'm a Chicago gangster.
Yeah. That was the wonderful era of just actors being like, Kevin Costner, you're Robin Hood, whatever. You could just do your Kevin Costner.
Right. He sounds like he's from Oklahoma.
Yeah. I do want to note that producer Ben has left the room, and I am now producer M.
You are producer M.
Wow.
So that is true.
Chop, chop.
The divine producer M. But yes, I think like Connery would have done Connery, and it would have been very appealing. But he would not have submitted himself to a character.
Sure,
it would have looked like Sean Connery and sounded like Sean Connery.
Most likely.
And he probably would have gone like, well, audiences won't accept me. I
think it could have worked. It wouldn't have been as good of a movie.
It'd be a different movie.
It would be Hunt for Red October. You'd be like, this is like a perfect piece of like, this is a really fucking solid thriller. It would not have been the transcendent film that it is, I would argue.
Also, Connery is like a big burly guy. He's like 6'2" and he's burly, right? Which is more how, I mean, Cox is a big burly guy. I don't know if he's that tall. He's pretty tall. Whereas like Anthony Hopkins is quite small.
Yeah.
He's short.
Yeah.
And in the movie does not present him as sort of like a physical specimen exactly.
No, and he has like these very delicate blue eyes.
Oh, the eyes are incredible.
Yeah.
But like he's more commanding as a result. Like you're scared of him because of the way he uses his voice, his sort of stillness in the room. You know what I mean? I mean, like the opening shot where she's going down the hallway and he's just like standing there. It's like literally there's like a red carpet that she's walking down and he's like at the end of it. Like it's so theatrical and he's so theatrical without it being theatrical.
That he's like waiting for you. That it's like the Mona Lisa like following.
It's the greatest scene in a movie.
I've been
right. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean there are like 5 scenes in this movie that are arguably the greatest scene in the movie.
I know, but like the movie is like Jack Crawford's like. Clarice, if she's running, I love the running. But like he's like, Clarice, hey, go talk to Hannibal Lecter, but be careful. She's like, okay. She goes see him, and we're like, hey, what's this movie gonna be about? Like, it's like a thing. I don't know, something's going. There's like serial killer on the loose. And like she meets with Chilton, you're like, yeah. And then like once that scene starts, you're like, oh, am I watching the greatest movie ever made?
What the fuck is this?
It's structured like a rom-com, but it's
a
horror movie.
100%.
And like that's the reason people were like, oh, I want to see Clarice and Hannibal fuck. But like, no.
It's one of those things that people thought they wanted
Hannibal,
to see.
The novel, right?
Yeah.
It's like Thomas Harris is like, this is what you wanted, right? And everyone's like,
and that's like it's the same thing that happened with the TV show where the relationship is so intimate,
and it's all in the tension, though. Right?
And like I talked enough to Brian Fuller to know that he wanted to do a Silence of the Lambs season. And
yes, of course, he was desperate.
He wanted to do a Clarice on the show, and like he was interested in desexualizing that relationship and like making it about mentorship. And
I think would be the smart way to go.
I don't remember if this was his casting or if it was fan casting, but I thought it was fucking great. And like now it would be perfect.
You tweeted Saoirse Ronan.
It was Saoirse Ronan.
You had tweeted that. Yeah.
And like now she's exactly the right age. It'd be like I hope they can work that out.
That would be incredible.
It would, because they still kind of talk about it as like a thing that they could maybe pull off, right?
Yeah.
Because now De Laurentiis is dead. Right? He ripped.
No offense, he's dead.
No offense to being excited that he's dead, but like he was part of the problem, right? Like he was sort of
the
like
problem was they had sold
Silence
the rights to Lifetime to do a show called Starling, which was about Clarice.
Of course, I forgot about that.
And then like. Those rights were tied up at the same time Hannibal was on. They've since expired. So, like, theoretically, the deal could be done. It requires somebody to want to make more Hannibal, which
which is sort of a tricky proposition because after Hannibal, which was such a huge hit, no Hannibal thing has ever really like lit the box office or the ratings on fire.
Nobody's wanted to like touch that sacred ground because Hannibal, of course, ran 17 seasons and was a massive success. And we still you still have people outside who are probably just like chanting Hannibal.
They're just eating people outside the embassy studios.
Yeah.
The Fannibals.
Handheads. Was Hannibal produced by NBC Universal?
No, it's produced by Gaumont International in association with the De Laurentiis company.
Okay.
Right.
Which is why NBC aired 3 seasons, because they got it for like $5.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the they weren't ending it wasn't airing like Saturday nights or whatever.
Yeah,
like
it was
had
on
weird
Saturdays,
time slots. Yeah.
NBC was like, we are literally any ad money we make from this, we make money on.
For them,
and
it was like,
you keep yelling us about it, so I guess we'll make it.
It was like burning off a Canadian drama in the summer. And NBC's like, it's a new show.
Yes, it was basically their Rookie Blue.
And the first season of it.
Love a Rookie Blue name check.
The first season of it was basically a crime procedural.
Yes.
And
it's a fantastic season.
That's terrific.
The Minnesota
I've never
Shrink
watched
season.
any of it.
And that season actually had okay ratings, like decent for a show that you got for $5. That is,
right, in which people's throat strings are turned into cello strings.
Yeah, and then season 2 is much more serialized. People start to drop off, and then season 3 is just one of the fucking weirdest things that's ever aired on American television, and like nobody watched.
It is truly quite odd.
I do love it though. I do want to ask this: is there a role that has as high a track record of great performances as Hannibal Lecter?
We talked about this on the Manhunter episode. But it's so wild.
But it's crazy
that lots of people have taken a shot at it. Most of them have done a really good, almost career-defining stuff with it.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, Anthony Hopkins is so associated with the role to the extent that you forget other people did. Right? Like, it's a weird thing that Hopkins both dominates it and there have been great other interpretations.
There are 4 actors who have played him, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In filmed media.
Yes.
Gaspar Ulliel, non-starter.
Sure.
The other 3 are all viewed as exemplary performances that are totally different from one another and aren't diminished by each other in any way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like there's even any sort of like, well, who's your favorite Batman? Like, there are people who sometimes make the argument that Cox is better, or that Mads got to do more with it or whatever. Sure. But everyone's just like, no, those are just like 3 perfect performances.
Hopkins not ruined, but he kind of, he leans on it in the sequels in a way that gets a little frustrating.
And the thing that's interesting is Brian Cox is playing a human.
Yes,
and
very much
Anthony Hopkins is playing Dracula.
Right.
And especially he gets campier and campier with it. And 100%. Mads Mikkelsen is playing Satan. And they are 3
he's
wildly
playing a
different
demon.
things.
Right. A hot demon.
Right.
Like who you want to maybe have you cook you dinner.
So that's the other thing is like talking about all these other people who could have played Hannibal. I feel like this is the kind of performance where people would have been scared in terms of how it would affect the audience's view of them.
Sure.
If you're coming into this already as an established actor, Hopkins essentially had nothing to lose at this point.
He has nothing to lose. 100%.
Because he was coming off of like 2 moments when he should have had his breakthrough and it failed to really maintain. So he just rips into this with the ferocity of someone going like, how do I make this the most interesting character I can?
Yeah.
That's all I have to do here. And in a way, it makes his career, but it also feels like a performance that would have doomed most other people's careers in that it became so iconic that he could never get out of the shadow of being Hannibal. And the fact that he then successfully has like a 20-year run where he's like doing Merchant Ivory movies and he's playing presidents and all this shit.
You go from this guy who has become this sort of like, footnote British theater actor.
Right.
To the next year, to 92, he has Howard's End. He has Dracula.
Yeah.
He's in Chaplin, right? Like,
Right.
By 93, he has The Remains of the Day in Shadowlands. Like, Hollywood's like, let's make you a movie star.
Yeah.
What fucking old guy can you play?
Right. They're
Right?
like, well, you're an old British person, so we're going to shove you in some costume dramas. And like, it works. Like, it was what he wanted to do, I think. And
he wanted to do it, and obviously he's a talent.
You talking about that, the closest thing I can think of is Captain Jack Sparrow.
Yes.
Where Johnny Depp got buried by that. And somehow Hopkins doesn't, until he goes back to do Hannibal
Once
again.
he goes back is when he starts to become a bit of a lazy actor, I would say. Now I actually quite enjoy current Hopkins where he's just an old guy and he's sort of leaning into it again. Like
it's the gravitas.
Yeah.
Right.
But my favorite Hopkins performance outside of this is, it's time to guess.
Nixon?
Right. Where he's like doing an impression, but he's also like, I am Anthony Hopkins. I'm not going to try and like,
he's doing the Connery thing.
He's doing the Connery thing.
You're never going to get
and
over.
He's nailing it. Where you're like, this guy is like a maniac, but also I do sort of love him. Like, there's that weird like tension that he's so good at finding.
I kind of love Nixon. I
Nixon
kind of think
rules.
Yeah, I think
Nixon is better than JFK.
Yeah, I still prefer JFK, but I do love Nixon.
That's my hot take.
I think that Nixon
is like Oliver Stone at his best. like piles of conspiratorial papers around him being like, don't you see? It was all happening in the Bahamas. And he like throws another thing at you. You're like, my God, Oliver, relax.
There was a time when I had to spend a lot of time thinking seriously about the show House of Cards, which is a terrible television show. But like, if I now try to think about House of Cards,
it's very fun, light set to work on.
As I have a friend who was on House of Cards and just like, I have actually talked to several people who were on House of Cards and just like, it was a nightmare. Yep. Just like the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. But
I wonder why. It's almost as if there was like one person who like has like a notorious track record of horrible behavior to everyone. Let me be frank.
Carry on, please.
But when I think about House of Cards for like 5 minutes, it just drifts into Nixon. It just becomes like
interesting
because I think those two are connected, and like Nixon is doing everything House of Cards tried to do in 2.5 hours, and is fantastic.
It is fantastic. I think also, it's just like Stone is such a great that is Stone. He's a paranoid and like a self-important
that's his perfect subject
person, right? Sure. Yeah. Whereas like the JFK, with JFK, he's making it about a person who's obsessed with the assassination, right? But like Nixon is just a great portrayal of power from a maniac about a maniac.
Yeah.
It's great. After Nixon, right? He starts flipping.
Yeah.
He keeps the old man roles, Amistad, classic old man, where he does that big speech.
Yeah.
He waters his plants.
What's the one where he fights a bear?
That's what I'm saying.
The Edge.
Then he's like, give me some action movies.
Right.
So
Instinct.
you have The Edge.
Yeah.
You have The Mask of Zorro.
Right.
Which people forget. He has a whole opening set piece.
Yes.
Where he is Zorro.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie, he's in it.
Yes. You recently tweeted a perfect movie.
It is a perfect film. It's the greatest film of all time. Then Instinct. Right. He's in
Bad Company.
Yeah. Bad Company. I saw that in theaters. That thing is a stinker. Joel Schumacher film.
I'm trying to remember now. The movie is terrible. Bad Company was written as a sequel to something.
That sounds right.
And I forget what it was, and it makes a lot of sense and is really funny.
I thought for a second we were talking about the movie Big Trouble, which was based on a Dave Barry novel.
Correct.
Which
yes, it was.
Correct.
I've been thinking about Dave Barry a lot lately. You ever think about Dave Barry?
Yes, and I think about him and I give a mild chuckle. Just a little wry sort of a skew smile wipes across my face when I think about Dave's world.
I've been feeling like if I read all of Dave Barry, I could understand our current political crisis.
I saw you tweeting about that.
And I'm just like, I'm trying to sell my editor on it. She's not convinced.
Bad Company was written as a sequel to Blue Street.
Right.
Which is wild stuff. And I guess it was just like, what if this time there was an old guy with Martin Lawrence? And it's like a buddy movie.
Well, no, I think the other problem was it was like the first one is he pretends to be a cop, but he's actually a robber. And they were like, how do we heighten it? And they were like, what if he ends up having to pretend to be an FBI agent? And they were like, through what series of events? And it's like his twin brother.
I believe it's a CIA agent.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. The idea is you heighten it. Yeah. And the plot of Bad Company is
to remind people who may have forgotten this film.
Dead identical twin.
Correct. It's Dave with CIA agents.
Right.
Yes, they need someone who looks like Chris Rock.
Right.
Chris Rock is dead. He has an identical twin, also played by Chris Rock, who's a funny guy, not a CIA agent.
I just remember
Anthony Hopkins is the guy who's like, oh, brother.
I remember them announcing that movie and me being amped.
Brother.
Because they were like, so here's a movie. It's called Bad Company. It's reworked from a script that was meant to be Blue Streak 2. It's Chris Rock and Anthony Hopkins. I was like, what a great oil and vinegar, odd couple, buddy cop action comedy, I presume. And then you see the movie. I remember even just seeing the trailer and going, wow, this looks so fucking dour.
Yeah, it's kind of just a thriller.
It's a thriller.
Yeah. And then Chris Rock,
starring two people who should not be playing those roles. Yeah, who have no chemistry together.
Speaking of the Anthony Hopkins of it all, as you're reading off these roles, I'm picturing them in my head. I've seen a lot of them. I'm even picturing the later Hannibal movies, and I'm like, he feels like a different person from the person in Silence of the Lambs.
He does.
Even when he's great,
He becomes more of a movie star after this, where then he's doing the Connery thing where he's like, character's got to come towards me. He's fully giving himself to.
Also, I feel like in the later Hannibal movies, because Hannibal brackets film does not come out for 10 years
it's 2000 2001
yeah,
because it's right after Gladiator.
Yeah,
right?
It is 2001, so it's 10 years after Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah,
and it just sort of feels like Hopkins is straining a little too hard to play similar age, like he's trying to be young, and there's a little too much like physicality. And then in Red Dragon, which is a prequel to silence is trying way harder, and it feels very strained. In my opinion.
I remember when Hannibal came out. That was February 2001. Mm-hmm. They were trying to replicate the Silence of the Lambs release date, and Jeff
the biggest
Wells,
R-rated opening of all
whom
time.
I seem to talk about every time I'm on this fucking podcast.
Well, he's
Jeff
the best
Wells.
of us. He is the best of us.
He was like, he saw an early screening and was like, they should release that on Christmas Day, and Ridley Scott can get 2 Best Picture nominations. And like, I'm pretty sure it was him. It might have been David Poland, but yeah.
Well, either one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Poland is the Oscar cursor.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah, okay.
Like, he was like fucking Phantom of the Opera, get ready, across the board. Is winning the big 5.
Poland is not a total shitball of a human being, but
no,
he curses everything that he talks about.
He is bad at predicting the Oscars. He is not a shitball. Jeff Wells is the combination of all 3 Hannibal Lecters, as you discussed. He is a vampire. He is Satan.
But he's also a man.
He's also, unfortunately, a constant reminder.
I think he now listens to our podcast. So
humanity's fallibility.
Let's throttle off the Wells.
He does. I
hope if he does listen, I hope he makes the banner on Hollywood Elsewhere say, a vampire, Satan, a man.
Man.
It'd be beautiful.
100%.
He did email and say that.
I said throttle off the Wells talk.
Talked to Hopkins a couple times, but do you folks know the Hopkins acting process? Because I find it kind of fascinating.
No, go ahead.
And everyone's like, he's the most professional actor. He's the most prepared. He just fucking like nails it. He like reads the entire script like 200 times.
Okay.
Like just obsessively
Sure.
reads, rereads. A month or 2 before filming, knows his lines backwards and forwards, has it like so thoroughly in his head, records himself doing all the dialogue every night, so that by the time he's gotten on set, he said it so many times that it's like second nature.
Right.
So that's part 1.
Kind of crucial for this movie where he's monologuing a lot.
Totally.
A lot of very sort of like complicated lines come out of his mouth.
But in terms of the actual language, he kind of puts in the work at a scale that almost no one else does.
Sure.
Of just like everyone's like obsessively, no one reads the lines, practices, memorizes harder, earlier, stronger than Hopkins. The second thing is, which is reported on less, but I have heard other actors who have worked with him say this in interviews and go like, I don't know if I should be saying this or not. What he does to get in a character is like he's like really big on like building the visuals of the character and the costume fitting and the hair and whatever. And then he has them take the Polaroid. I think it's still to this day a Polaroid. It needs to be an analog process. He takes the Polaroid from when they nail the look of the character that first time, and he has all the dialogue backwards and forwards, in his head, and he looks at the Polaroids, and they're like, it looks like a possession, where he just starts staring very deeply at the Polaroid, and then he like leans into it, and then like his eyes roll back into his head, and he like inhales and like stands straight up, and he's the character.
Cool.
And
not
like he's method acting, like now you have to call him Dr. Lecter.
Right,
but it's like he looks at the image of what they finally have nailed the look of the character to be, and he stares at it until he feels like he is embodying that. And then he's just like, okay, go.
Cool.
That's how I came out as trans.
He stared at a Polaroid.
Of like myself, I'm like, oh.
Right.
And then like brought it to my forehead, and everyone's like, what are you doing?
It's like a magic eye. So the plot of Seinfeld.
But we got to talk to Jodie Foster.
You want to talk about her career now?
I think we gotta.
Yeah.
Right.
We were saying we've never gone in.
Yeah, I was trying to cue you up. I really want to talk Foster.
Producer M.
Jodie Foster, as we all know, was a child actress.
The Coppertone Kid.
100%.
She's the one getting pants by the dog.
That's sure, absolutely.
Right. And then, she's in Freaky Friday, and she is the Paper Moon TV show, and the Bad News Bears. Was she in one of the sequels? Am I wrong about that? I feel like she replaced Tatum O'Neal 2 times, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think so. I mean, she was in things. Yeah, no, she was in a lot of TV shows.
Bugsy Malone.
Yes. People forget that Bugsy Malone and Freaky Friday come out the same year as Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Taxi Driver was late in her child acting career.
No.
It was pretty quickly because obviously she's only like 14 years old when she does Taxi Driver. But like, and so she did kind of, after that whole big year, starts transitioning more to, whatever, grown-up movies.
Right, but Taxi Driver, I think, was like, oh shit, she can actually act, but also was seen as something of a like, Selena Gomez doing Spring Breakers.
Because
it's like someone trying to lay the groundwork for an adult career by establishing early that she's not going to be in Disneyland for her entire life.
Because when she's in The Accused, it's kind of a like, oh, Jodie Foster's back kind of vibe.
Right,
like, you know, like, oh, here's like a serious performance from the famed child actor who was in Taxi Driver. And then in between The Accused and Silence of the Lamb is just one movie, Catch Fire / Backtrack, not a big movie. And then after this, much like with Hopkins, Hollywood is like, okay, you're a movie star.
You're the number
one.
one.
An Oscar, you have two.
Yeah.
Right, so
you're
like,
ostensibly the biggest female star in Hollywood.
She starts directing a lot too.
She starts directing early,
which she will always say she prefers to acting, and that she wanted to become more of a director and act even less and less.
She makes Little Man Tate, I believe, it comes out the same year.
That was a big part of their Oscar campaign for Silence of the Lambs. Was they were like, we're going to put Little Man Tate out there. It's going to be a sort of phantom Oscar campaign, because she's going to get all this press.
Cute movie.
It's a very nice little movie.
And then in 95, she made Home for the Holidays, which I think is a good movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
That's a very good movie.
And then in 2011, she made The Beaver.
Yeah.
More of a mixed bag, that one.
She kind of discovered Jennifer Lawrence, though.
She did?
She didn't. Winter's Bone. But I think, didn't they make that before Winter's Bone?
I believe they did. I am all but certain they did. That's also one of those movies where that was the hot script.
Yeah.
I read it as a script. I wanted to play the Anton Yelchin part so fucking badly. And on paper, you were just like slam dunk of all slam dunks. And even when they cast Mel Gibson, I was like, that's an interesting casting choice. And then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, it is a script that is impossible to actually put on its feet.
This is a thing that I think a lot about blacklist scripts.
Yeah.
There are so many of them that are like, oh, this is a fucking amazing.
The ones that read the best often are unactable.
Yeah, Passengers was a movie where like the script is like very good, and then
it's a pretty perfect script.
And then the movie, you're like, oh, what the fuck, you know?
And Beaver is the same thing as Passengers, where it's like it's creepypasta. No, both of them are so difficult to pull off tonally. Mm-hmm. Where reading the script, the writer is literally describing how you're viewing scenes and letting you know the tone it's supposed to have. And you're putting it in your mind's eye the way that like hits your palate the best.
Yeah.
And those two films like put up on their feet are just like impossible to do.
I did a Twitter thread about this around the movie Life Itself, the Dan Fogelman movie, which is like, you read that on the page, you're probably like, oh yeah, great, I get it. And like you hear the famous story, like Warren Beatty wept reading that script, and like then you see it on screen, and it's just stupid.
Right.
And, like,
very stupid.
I'm friends with Kyle Killen, the guy who wrote The Beaver.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now he's showrunning Halo, I think, which is a weird choice.
Right.
Halo, like the video game?
No, the Showtime TV series Halo, based on the video game.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited.
But yeah. And
he's an excellent writer.
It's just like great screenwriting, which The Silence of the Lambs has but great screenwriting is so often about just like economics of character.
Yeah.
And anytime you're giving yourself something super flashy, it becomes dangerous. And then actually depicting it on screen is too much.
Right. And it was like there was almost the Jay Roach, Jim Carrey Beaver, which would have gone like totally comedy. Mm-hmm. And then it was sort of surprising that it was like Jodie Foster, Mel Gibson are going to do it, and it's more of a drama. And in reality, like neither one was the right approach.
I kind of want to see the Jay Roach, Jim Carrey one, because it'd just be like,
yeah. It would have been
I just
Cable
want to
Guy.
complete Foster's career. One, her last directorial effort was famously a biopic of David Sims
called Money Monster.
That's right. And then
it's the film about you starting the Patreon.
And then there was also, but like we should also, in the 90s, she had a somewhat robust like movie star career. Right? There's Maverick, there's Nell, there's Contact, there's Anna and the King.
Yeah.
That's her sort of like 90s run. She gets an Oscar nomination for Nell. Contact, as people forget, was a pretty big hit and is a great movie.
Yeah. Was disliked at the time, but
Zemeckis. My God.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of movies.
It's long. That's the biggest holdout.
Anna and the King is kind of like a big Oscar-y movie that flops, and it's also just a stupid idea. Like King and I, people should sing songs. Like, I don't know that I want to just hear the story of it.
Her 2000s are fascinating because she'll take like 3 years in between each movie to the extent that people are like, oh, I guess maybe Jodie Foster's like done. And then she comes back and has another like third base hit.
She has a couple.
Panic Room.
Panic Room and Inside Man.
Flight Plan.
You're calling that a base hit?
Box office?
Oh, box office, sure.
I'm talking box office.
Flight Plan it's weird. She has made two films that I would call outright offensive in the 2000s. Flight Plan and The Brave One. Two films that are like, when you watch them now, you're like, this is problematic. This is a tricky movie.
Have not seen either.
Yeah. Flight Plan is basically a movie that's like, what if you suspected the brown person on your plane was a terrorist and you were right? Like, that's what Flight Plan is.
But Flight Plan did 85 domestic?
Yeah, Flight Plan was definitely a hit. Can you tell me the director?
Robert Schwenke.
Robert Schwenke.
Yeah.
Made 89 domestic.
Director of Red.
Pretty watchable movie. I find almost any movie set on a plane watchable because I am so tense during a movie set on a plane.
Just like Jodie Foster in a thriller is like so effective.
Brave One is not a movie I like. But she did get she got that Globe nomination. That was like
Is that Neil Jordan?
That was Neil Jordan. People thought that was going to be a big Oscar play for her and a big sort of like revenge thriller
Death
hit.
Wish. We just did Death Wish is still like a template
I know.
that once in a while people are like, I don't know, let's do a Death Wish with X actor.
Now she's like directing television. She did some Orange is the New Black.
She did a bunch. Yeah.
And then after that, Nim's Island.
Right.
Gotta give it up for Nim's Island. But like Carnage, the Polanski movie, Elysium,
a movie that hangs her out to dry. I mean, she had sort of said, like, I was pretty much retired from acting. I didn't really want to act anymore. And I loved District 9 so much, I called him up and said, I'll do anything.
And she kind of has the inside man role, but it's like the bad version of that role, right? Like she's sort of the evil rich lady.
Right, and I forget which way it is because the movie's forgettable, but either she filmed it with a French accent and they made her dub it to American later or vice versa.
Oh, dear. And then
her whole performance is ADR'd because they wanted her to do a different voice than what she did on set.
And then last year, Hotel Artemis.
Yes.
You forget.
Which she's
good in.
Really fucking good in.
It's not a movie I love. It's one of those movies where I'm like, I'm ready to love this movie.
Me too.
Like, love the concept, love the cast.
The cast
love
is
it.
unbelievable.
It's sort of like John Wick, except John Wick I love.
Right. That's another screenplay movie, though.
It's another screenplay movie, 100%.
Totally.
And it's not like it flops it, but it doesn't really get past like cool ideas.
She is pretty phenomenal in it.
She's great.
And she's giving a really funny performance. It's a full body performance.
It's wild that she's in it. Why is she
so
in
wild.
it?
I don't know.
She must have just liked the script.
I think she just liked the script.
So as you're right. So
but
it's
then
like basically people are like, oh, I guess she just directs now and kind of chills out. And then once in a while she'll do a Hotel Artemis.
Right.
Or she'll show up at the Golden Globes to speak up for Mel Gibson.
She loves Mel.
This is the thing. I think
this is the thing when you look like Polanski, Gibson. There's a lot of people in her filmography. Wow, she really works with the
famous thing about her was like she was the one child star who didn't fall apart like that for a long time. People, she was like, she's the exception that proves the rule. And yet in the middle of it, she has the John Wayne Hinckley thing where, where it's this huge burden on her life and she like somehow overcomes that psychologically. And I think that in some way made her more predisposed to be like, these guys are damaged, but like I see the good in them or something like that. Like, I think she had to get past this element of, this terrible thing happened and I can't think it was about me.
Sure.
She also was like a massive star, had won 2 Oscars, was like an A-list box office leading lady, and was
often afraid or not interested in being one.
Sure.
But I think Hollywood was always ready to put her at the top. Right?
But the other fascinating thing about her was she was at her peak living in a total glass closet in terms of her sexuality with a total like don't ask, don't tell attitude of there was never any denial. There were no beards. You know, like 97 or 98, she like has a child through in vitro fertilization with a partner, and everyone like reports on it, but just doesn't like directly say like she is married to a woman.
Is she out now?
She is. She gave a speech at some award show at the Globes, but this was like fairly recently, right? Like 2012.
She won like a Lifetime Achievement Award, and she gave this sort of odd speech.
And she said like my wife. Yeah. Who she's now divorced from. But she, like, when she finally came out, she just sort of said, like, that person I've been married to for, like, 15 years and we just don't directly acknowledge it.
I had the memory that she gave that speech and everyone was like, did Jodie Foster just come out? And then in the press room, they were like, did you just come out? She's like, no.
I think she doesn't like the press that much. No, and that's fine.
I mean, fair.
I read it at the time as her saying, like, that wasn't me coming out. Everyone knows I'm gay. You know?
Sure.
Because there was never any sort of, like, diversion with her, which like, it wasn't even like, oh, rumors have dogged. It was like, oh yeah, Jodie Foster's gay. She's gay. Everyone knows that.
I want to point out she also directed the Black Mirror episode.
Interesting.
People forget.
Yeah.
She directed Archangel.
Oh, right.
Which is not my favorite episode of Black Mirror.
It's
not
fine.
The worst
she
episode.
Gets good performances.
She does.
I just find it very interesting that even if she didn't like publicly come out at her peak, she was essentially the first like major gay movie star.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, there was no alternate narrative being thrown around about her.
I guess so.
You ever think about how
the narrative more became like, why hasn't she come out? Like, why hasn't she done the formal sort of-
Yeah.
You ever think about how in Home for the Holidays she cast as the hot guy who might tempt Holly Hunter to move home as David Strathairn? Like,
good taste.
What a call! What a call!
Did Karen Hahn direct this movie? Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of like, are there scenes or sequences we haven't talked about? Obviously, we have talked about some of the major sequences.
Well, I'm
you
going to
have
do
your
this,
running time gripe. I understand
this will get us into
one
the
thing I want to
transitions.
shout out. This movie was a legendary, scary VHS cover movie for me.
Yep.
My parents rented it because I think even though it was like, I'm a young kid when this comes out, so like it's probably the period where they're probably seeing not a lot of movies, but I'm sure this thing was such a big thing that they were like, all right, let's rent Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
The poster, iconic poster, Jodie Foster's face in like extreme contrast. And
it weirdly doesn't even look like her. It feels like its own piece of iconography.
Yes. With the moth over her face.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know the poster.
Yeah.
Greatest poster. I was like, what is this movie?
Totally.
It's about lambs?
Yeah.
What is it? And my parents were like, no, we can't explain this one to you. You're too young. There's just, I don't know where to begin.
I had the exact same relationship with it. And
I knew it was scary.
Totally.
I knew that.
Well,
like,
the image is upsetting, but you can't put your finger on why.
Right.
And the skull on the back of the
What's
moth
up with that? Right.
is like, is that just how it happens to look? Or is that them making a movie about a monster moth? Like, is that a real species?
Is this movie about a Mothman and prophecies that might be about the Mothman?
Prophecies. Great fucking movie.
I have not seen it.
It's actually it's really nice little movie.
I believe it.
Like it's we have talked about so much of this movie and we haven't talked about two of the most famous sequences like at all.
I just want to point out also there is the iconic Hopkins poster that is never used.
Yes.
They had the reverse essentially.
Right.
Carry on.
That's gross. It's a gross poster. I don't
There's
like that
something
poster.
I think there's a reason they were like, you know what, the Foster one is the good balance of light and dark.
There is something.
Looks like you're going to get eaten by Darth Maul.
His face is totally red.
Yes.
There's something about the blankness of Foster's face that makes the poster really eerie. I was also thinking it's a rare example of like a poster that totally works on its own as just a striking piece of iconography. I don't get what this poster's saying. I don't understand what's going on in this movie, but it catches my eye and it makes me curious. And also, after you have seen the movie, the poster is more impressive.
100%.
You're like, that's an incredible visual encapsulation
of what's going on here.
Totally. But it's something that like doesn't sell those things to you and spoil it for you going into the theater. And then the poster becomes its own individual work of art.
Great movie.
Great fucking movie.
Now,
okay.
What did you want to talk about?
We barely talked about the second hour of this movie. We haven't talked about Lecter's
escape. We
escape.
mostly talk about the setup.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about Lecter's escape. You're right. What's the
And we haven't talked about the Buffalo Bill's house.
Right.
The
oubliette.
Yeah.
Can I do my scene rundown because I think this will serve as a transition to get into the bits we haven't done. Sure. Okay? Hopkins has 9 scenes in the movie.
Sounds great.
I can't say I was 100% accurate.
He's
to
9 for 9.
He's 9 for 9.
He's 9 for 9.
He's 9 for 9. But my rule was if he is in a scene, my stopwatch is going. Mm-hmm. And if the scene ends, my stopwatch stops.
That is what the rule should be. And 100%. I feel like this weird screen time thing became more about when do we see them on screen, as I already said. Right. And so, like, what is it, 12 minutes? There's some, like, number out 16. There. Right, where they're like, he's actually only in the movie for 16 minutes.
No, his face is only directly on screen for 16 minutes, but that's mostly because of the fucking cinematic language of this movie.
Yes.
Which is separating Clarice and Hopkins.
Right.
His dialogue is over those shots.
No, there's no disputing this. Right. You count the scenes he's in, not the look
right, so
of
I
space.
counted any scene in which he was working.
Yes.
Where he is affecting the scene.
Where he's a character in the scene.
So even when he escapes and he's wearing the fake face and all of that, that is a scene he is in.
That is true, though. Right. I forgot. Hannibal does have a whole scene where he's just pretending to be a dead body.
Yeah, but that's a scene. Anthony Hopkins
I agree.
showed up. He was number 2 in the call sheet. They said, Mr. Hopkins, you want a coffee?
And he was like, yes, thank you.
Right.
Like
you want a pillow in between
mask.
takes? Hopkins in that scene, okay? So
do you think anyone got to eat those lamb chops? It's a classic example of great-looking food not getting eaten.
The thing that drives you the craziest.
It drives me crazy. They're rare.
Okay, the first meeting scene, 6 minutes and 40 seconds. The second meeting scene after the rain where he gives her the towel, 4:20, right?
Do you want me to add these times together, or have you already done it?
I've added together.
Okay.
Okay. Then it's 5:30, I think is the third meeting where they start the quid pro quo thing, right? Then
quid pro quo.
Scene 4, 1:30 is Anthony held with him with the cage on his face, talking about the transfer. Yes. Then scene 5, I believe, is him meeting with the senator.
With the senator. Yeah.
That's 3:30. Scene 6 is the big one. Sure. That's the Silence of the Lambs monologue. That's 7.
Yeah. And then him in the weird cell and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. Then him escaping from the cell, the attack, is 4. Mm-hmm. His screen time in terms of...
and then also the phone call at the end.
Please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Then it's the 2 minutes of him wearing the other guy's face, getting out.
Sure.
Right? Ending with him waking up in the ambulance. And then scene 9 is 1 minute, which is the phone call at the end. He's got 36 minutes and 30 seconds of screen time in this movie by my count.
Right. In like a 2-hour movie.
In a 2-hour movie.
Regular.
Now, the thing that shifts is...
he's not in much of the latter half.
That's the thing.
You know, because then it becomes, got to get Buffalo Bill.
Because the first hour of the movie, I was pretty much up to 30 minutes. And I was
the first hour of the movie is about the two of them.
Right.
Yeah, that's mostly what it's about.
Right. And then there's a large chunk for about half an hour plus where he doesn't appear until the phone call at the end.
Because he's getting to the Caribbean.
Right.
He's getting a wig. He's getting a hat.
Here's the thing I think that throws this conversation is if you gender flip this, if this was somehow a movie about like, I don't know, Eddie Redmayne and Sandra Bullock was like a serial killer, like people would be like, oh yeah, she's the lead.
Of course.
Because we don't expect a man to play a supporting lead role to a woman in a movie like this. But that's what this is. It's a lead role that supports the other lead.
Or there's a weird version of it wherein like the Cursed movie, the Danish girl, fucking Alicia Vikander is 100% the main character in that film. Has the most screen time.
Indisputably the main character of that film.
She's
the Danish girl.
She is the Danish girl in that film. And they put her in supporting because it was like a cakewalk.
She won an Oscar.
It is so weird that she has that Oscar.
It's so weird that she won and that she beat another lead performance that should have won, Rooney Mara.
Yes.
As in Carol.
Yes. The other thing was,
and in that case as well, Rooney Mara was the actual Carol
100%.
in that movie. Yeah.
She is Carol. She plays Carol.
Right. But it also is incredibly strange that I feel like right up until the nominations, everyone was like, Alicia Vikander is going to get nominated for Ex Machina. And she's probably going to win the Oscar because it feels like a big year for her. And that will be a cool Oscar win. And then the surprise was...
They were predicting Danish Girl.
We were predicting the Danish Girl.
Yeah.
You're reading the weird blogs. No. Danish Girl was... Ex Machina had its own lovely surprise win.
Yeah.
People were kind of predicting Danish Girl actress.
No.
Ex Machina supporting.
No, they weren't.
They
ran it as supporting.
There were a couple places that said that, but they ran.
But once the precursor started, she was nominated as supporting actress because that was the move they made. Who had that movie?
That was
Focus.
Right. You know, Golden Globes, Golden Schmoes. Oh no, you're right.
Oh,
the Globes, they did that trick.
Thank you.
That was the problem.
She got the double nomination, and people were like, "Is she going to repeat it?"
But then at the SAGs, she went supporting because at the SAGs you put someone in a category and they can't be excluded.
Yeah,
and she won. And that was the moment when Rooney Mara's agent called me and said she wasn't going to do an interview with me.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad.
I was going to talk to her because she was getting ready for an Oscar campaign, and then the SAGs happened, and I think that everyone else was like, "Okay, forget it.
Save your money."
Alicia's winning. Yeah.
You doomed Rooney Mara, David.
It's not my fault.
It's your fault.
It's your fault.
It's your fault.
You're right. You're right. There was the Ex Machina Globe nom.
Thank you. So yes, we've talked a lot about the major interrogation.
We talked about the Hannibal, the Clarice scenes. Yes.
I love all the stuff with Cassie Lemons is so good too, and such a good example of them not putting too fine a point on it, but just like such a lived-in relationship.
It's just like this is what a female friendup's like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh.
And especially in this incredibly male-dominated field,
right,
where they are like having to prove themselves twice as hard at every single turn, and also dealing with such heavy, awful shit all the time, where it's like having a friendship of someone else who gets that scene where they're going over the case file and figuring him out, and it's all in the Demme first-person close-ups, and Cassie Lemon's lips are trembling just a little bit. It's this like incredible like repeating micro expression she keeps on making. Right. And it is like they're excited because they're solving it. but the heaviness of what they're talking about is so disturbing that it's still affecting her psychologically.
I also just like that scene is Clarice being like, hey, friend, figure this out with me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like just her with like Hannibal in her head, like poring over notes by herself.
Well, another scene I love is when they watch the press conference of the senator. And she's like, she's really smart. She knows what she's doing. Right. She's really smart. And explains to everyone, like, she understands that Buffalo Bill is going to have a harder time killing her.
Right. If
she has a name, if she's a person. Which then transitions into it puts the lotion on its skin and then it gets the hose again.
Right.
Which is like Ted Levine's best scene as an actor where he's fully playing, talking about like the Demme,
struggle.
Like this is a human being. It's a guy working as hard as he can to play the monster and to totally depersonalize her.
That scene is insanely upsetting.
And so deeply
because this
upsetting.
movie is not that violent.
No.
Even though it's, about a guy who eats people and there's some eating.
And there's nothing viscerally graphic in that scene.
Not in that scene. And really the most graphic thing in this movie is a severed head in a jar, which is creepy.
Right. And the autopsy.
But then the skin, the face skin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gross.
There's some gross things in this movie.
Right. But I think
a cannibal.
Yeah. But the scenes with her in the oubliette, in the pit, and like her seeing the nail and all that, like that's the stuff where you're kind of like, I might have to turn this off. I'm upset, right? Like that's sort of the most chilling stuff in the movie. And him doing the weird shrieking.
One touch I love, this is skipping ahead to the end, is that it's scored with that fucking dog barking.
Yeah.
Which is just like, this dog is in pain.
Very anxiety-inducing. Yes.
And it's such a weird little touch that you can hear throughout the house at different...
It's so panicky, all that stuff.
She's so good too, Brooke Smith.
Is
every
amazing.
performance in this film is incredible. Every two-line performance is incredible. But her in the car... I forget that this movie has like 4 really strong needle drops, but her in the car
Ben wanted to talk about one
listening to American Girl,
yes.
You get such a sense of who she is in temperament,
right,
but it's beautiful that it's devoid of the context of her parents, right? That it's just, it could be any random person. You don't understand the weight she's going to hold culturally.
Right. The part of
as a victim.
Part of Buffalo Bill's problem was that he accidentally abducted a senator's daughter. Like he doesn't, he's not doing it for that reason, but that's like what awakens national interest.
But it's also just like such a beautiful like story decision on Thomas Harris's part, which is like, that's how you explain why they're willing to deal with fucking Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
Because suddenly this becomes a thing that the president's weighed in on.
Right.
Every time anyone goes anywhere in this movie, they go like, oh, that Buffalo Bill case? Everyone knows this fucking guy.
Right.
He's equivalent to the Zodiac Killer and that like the mythologizing is getting out of hand. Right. The president is weighing in on this. It's become such an emotional story that it's like, we can clean up any mess after the fact with Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
We just need to find her now, which is great. And watching her do all the math of like, how she can figure it out, but also how she can use this case to her career's benefit to be able to sort of firmly get her foot in so that she can be inarguable.
Right.
Within the FBI.
She's ambitious, like in a normal way.
Right. She gets it. She's a
and
tiny
again,
woman.
There's a version of this movie where she is more cutthroat because like that's often how women who are careerists are presented in these
Or
kinds
where
of
she
movies,
gives a fucking speech to Casey Lemons about, we don't get to do it.
Sure, exactly.
Or she gives that speech to Hannibal Lecter and he's like, you don't understand how hard my life's been. Right.
And Hannibal Lecter is an ally and, he's
look,
I agree, and he busts out some stats about like, payment gap.
He is woke.
I mean, there is like every scene he's in the movie, he walks in and he just is like, hey, the ally has arrived.
Yes. It's weird that he, on his jumpsuit, wrote the future is female.
And then if you turn around on the other side, it says, nevertheless, she persisted.
Right. And both are written in blood.
No. Okay, so I also think like, Red Dragon, the first Harris novel, which is about like a man who he's the version of the cop who's like, I have a disease, and my disease is that I understand criminals and I'll never be cured. Right? Like I understand killers. That's like what Will Graham type is.
Yeah.
Whereas like this movie is all about Hannibal trying to understand Clarice.
Right.
And her disease is like, I just feel like if I save this person, then finally the ocean inside me will be calm.
Well,
right?
the beauty of the
even
title,
though she knows it won't at this.
The beauty of the title is that the title is aspirational. What she is striving for in life is to get to the silence of the lambs.
Yes.
She wants to be in a place where she feels like she's been able to personally stop the crying because the idea that people are in that much pain and suffering flips her the fuck out.
And like, it is wild that this movie, the crux of this movie is that story.
Right.
Because it's not like that story, she's then like, lambs, but an anagram of lambs is this, and that's where he lives. Like, it's not like Lecter is trying to get her to realize something about the case when they're talking about her.
But it's such a key thing because, as you said, like, viewing Will Graham as this sort of shadow of Hannibal or vice versa, right?
Sure.
They're both people who have spent their lives studying the psychology of incredibly broken, dangerous people, right? And it has kind of destroyed both of them.
Which is like what behavioral science of the FBI, when Mindhunter eventually is going to be, like, and this movie is based on the Mindhunter. Jack Crawford is the Mindhunter guy, right? Like, that's the classic thing, right? If you spend all this time with serial killers, maybe you'll sort of start to go mad yourself.
And Hannibal's sort of superpower is he understands that mind so well that it gives him such a clear vision of how fucked up humanity is and the human brain can be, that it makes him into this total fucking like nihilist who wants to eat people's brains and shit, right?
It's also really smart about making Buffalo Bill someone that only Clarice could catch.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Her magic power is understanding him as a person, right? And that's what eventually unlocks it for her.
Because
and that's why that conversation is so pivotal.
She has not given up on humanity yet.
Yeah, 100%.
Which Will Graham is only so successful in being able to stop Hannibal Lecter because he's already gotten to him.
Right.
The soul's already started getting eaten away at, you know? And the fact that Clarice is so much still in the aspirational phase of maybe I can stop it all. Maybe I can let the lambs go free and they'll stop screaming.
Right. It's kind of about the ways that men fail to understand women and the ways that women always understand men and like are able to navigate within that space. Because like if you accept that Buffalo Bill is not trans, which Demme certainly wants us to think, then he is a man who is like not comprehending that womanhood is more than this costume he wants to put on, which is true.
He
and
thinks that'll fix it if he just can find the right size and the right person. And,
and the Thomas Harris thing, like Brian Fuller was big into this, is like every killer wants to transform themselves in some way. And like he's trying to wash away his pain by becoming what he thinks of as the opposite of himself without realizing that like it's within him at the same time.
Right. That's not
right. It's not that he feels that he is a woman. It's that he wishes he were a different person.
Yeah.
So the most drastic way he can think of making that happen.
Which is why he's like applied for sex reassignment surgery, but rejected, as like Hannibal points out.
Because back then, like the way to become like legally trans was like you had to like go essentially full time, which means dressing as the gender that you are. You had to do that for like 2 years. And then you could start on hormones and then you could do so. And like it was this long. And like clearly he's not doing that. Like he doesn't want to take the social risk of like going out dressed in women's clothing or whatever.
Which tells you everything because you sense that he would not feel any freedom from doing that.
Yeah.
He is looking for some sort of magic solve to how much he hates being in his own skin, which is because of the life he's lived.
That
you know?
said, I do think that one of the areas in which it kind of gets at the trans experience in a way that is like damaging is it's talking about someone who desperately does not want to be himself. And that is often like, I remember for many years, I just was like, oh, I don't want to be a woman. I just don't want to be me.
Sure.
And like the body I'm in feels wrong to me, but that doesn't mean I want to be a woman because it's like a huge conceptual leap to make. It's like breaking apart society on some level. And like, I do wonder, you know, for all the movies protest to the contrary, it does capture that element of the experience with Buffalo Bill. And I'm like, I wonder to what degree you could do a sympathetic trans reading of this character. I think you could. I'm not going to try it, but I think you could.
Yeah. It'd be tough. But you go like it takes 20 plus years after this movie for us to start getting like trans characters played by trans actors, written and directed by trans.
Right. And then, like that's 5 years ago. And even that is an offensive and misguided project, essentially.
Once Eddie Redmayne did it, then Hollywood was like, okay, everybody who's had to do it has done it.
Yep. That's it. We finally are a little sick of this.
And that's why when Scarlett Johansson tried to do it, it's like, nope, Eddie Redmayne did it. That was the end of the road.
Done. You missed your window.
The other thing that I noticed this and I don't know is like whenever Hannibal's talking to Clarice, his mind immediately goes to the worst thing. So like when, you know, like she went to her dad dies, she goes to live with her dad's cousin. And he's like, and did he do all terrible things? So like he always goes there. And I think it's partly that he just can't resist like pushing a button, but also like he just assumes the world is like completely overflowing.
And when
with
she
evil.
shows up, he's like, "Oh, so they sent you because they think I'll want to fuck you, right?"
And then he's like, "Does Jack Crawford want to fuck you?" And she, she's good at sort of deflecting all that stuff, but he's always just like, "Yeah, no, it has to be the worst thing." Right?
Because he spent his life studying.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right. The worst psychological mechanisms a person can have.
And then, whereas Clarice is more like, even though she took the lamb and it was too heavy and she couldn't save the lamb.
Yeah.
Like, she's still like, you know what? I'm going to keep trying to save the lamb.
The smart thing about the end of this movie is it understands that you can defeat minor demons, but you can never defeat the devil. Like, Hannibal Lecter is always going to escape. Hannibal Lecter is always going to be out there in the world. Right. But Clarice's approach can work for a time.
You can save one woman. You can stop one villain.
It's why Lecter is so compelling.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, oh yeah, this guy doesn't belong in jail. He's like a caged animal. Like you're like, I know. Like he just has that feeling where you're like, he should be out there, even though that's scary. You know what I mean? Like you just like the idea of him operating at full power is kind of thrilling.
The scene with the senator is incredible. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously you have like the most iconic
thing back to Baltimore,
look, but him with the straitjacket, the orange jumpsuit on the stretcher,
and of course
with the mask, which is just another thing where watching this movie for the first time as a 15-year-old, I was like, okay, but I've seen like 1,000 fucking parodies of The Mask.
Sure.
And parodies of Jim Carrey's The Mask.
That's right.
No, but I've seen so many people wearing the mask as a joke and fucking putting it on a garbage pail card or whatever.
Goddamn Crystal.
Right.
Of course. Brought it out on the Oscars stage.
That I was like, this is going to have no power for me. And the first time they wheel him out in it, you go, that is fucking terrifying. Yeah. And watching it again last night, there's something about it, like his just wide open, piercing blue eyes and his blank expression underneath and his mouth looking like it's in its own jail cell. The fact that it's like little metal bars in front of his teeth.
It's also just a great. He's too bitey.
The thing that the impersonations of it don't get is that his eyes are darting just a little bit.
His eyes are incredible.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
He's like looking for an escape, even though he knows there isn't one.
And then, of course,
they wheel him out to the senator, and he like starts giving the information he wants, but also it's like
he can't help himself.
This is his only joy in life.
Breastfeeding,
and this is like
he just can't help himself.
Anthony Held like sucks. He's basic. There's no fun there, you know. Sure. And then like he hates
Anthony Held is so good in this movie though. Like his whole preening, like he's the best specimen I've got. You know, he's like a weird little. Yeah, sorry, carry on. I'm sorry.
No, and like he hates everyone else like in his like wing. Yeah. You know, I mean, the fact that he kills the other guy for throwing the semen on Clarice is just like, please, there's a difference between me and guys like this.
Right. He basically, Clarice lost Hannibal, but then when that happened, Hannibal's like, I owe you a solid.
Yeah.
Come over, I'll make dinner. You know, that would be his usual approach.
Yeah, I'll draw you.
Right.
Yeah, and then it's just like, this movie just has like a couple like straight up set pieces. Where like
the whole prison, I mean, the whole escape
thing is incredible.
Sequence, right?
It's just like stunning,
that
edge
set
of your
is
seat.
Amazing.
Yes.
I don't know what mustache is amazing on that one officer.
Yes.
It's the craziest.
He's got like
mustache.
the very thin but very long.
It's like a crazy variation on a Fu Man.
Yeah.
By the way, Ben's back.
Ben's back.
Oh, Ben is back.
Ben is back. Beautiful Ben is back.
Should I just throw up some thoughts of stuff earlier that you guys have already talked about?
Yeah,
Here, I'll just read a quick note here. Shady storage units across America. Love that. I would not help anyone with a street couch into a van, let alone at night.
Sure. I do like that in the scene she has the agency of, this is clearly a bad idea, right? That they don't play her as a total naive, like, sort of moron. It's like, she knows, like, fuck, this is the kind of thing that usually ends up with you being put in a pit, right?
Right.
And it's that basic human thing of, like, in the moment, you're like, I should give him benefit of the doubt.
Sure, right. And then it's too late. The second, because he just backs her in. And then
Yeah. We didn't talk about the storage locker. That move of Hannibal being like, go visit a friend of mine. Transfer to storage locker.
Be real chill.
Weird old cowboy man in the rain who's like, oh, son could come tomorrow. And she's like sliding under the door. And then that fucking setup of like the carriage with the plush interior and the headless mannequin and then the head in a jar. How long are we supposed to believe that Hannibal has been in jail, that he just set up this little display and paid long enough for it to remain in the storage locker.
That's a great question.
So that's
been at least 10 years. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, that's an incredible... What an artist this guy is.
Yeah, good for him.
He's a big picture thinker.
It's made storage unit, like when I drive those on the highway late at night, like it's
Scary.
so creepy.
Right. They are creepy.
There is something about
There's
that
things
now.
in those buildings, right?
It's a true mystery.
What were you going to say, Emily?
I just was going to say, I don't remember.
Amy Taubin, the great Amy Taubin, film critic, wrote the Criterion essay. I don't know if you've read it.
I've not.
It's worth reading. It's very good. And she points out, like, that scene, there's flags everywhere.
Yeah.
The scene, obviously, in the prison, the escape prison, the weird cell. I don't know, how do you describe it? The weird cell in a gymnasium thing. It has the weird American flag, like, and like when
and
Hannibal
looks like the grand old oak
again, makes a weird little display for everyone of Charles Napier hanging with his skin ripped, right? Like, Hannibal could have just gotten out of there, but he's like, no, there needs to be some pomp and circumstance.
Because he needs people to respect him. Like, he needs people to recognize that he's a genius.
Yes, exactly.
And an artist.
It's like, she's like, all these tattered flags, all these relics of America, like, this is all very intentional.
Yeah,
I really I advise you to read it. It's really good.
I'll read it.
Yeah.
The TV show went a little, like, it did great stuff with like the death tableaus.
Yes.
But like, what I like about this movie is that you can bend your brain in a way where you're like, okay, yeah, I get like how he did this, even though he had like 10 minutes to like string that guy up from the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it is like, it's a pretty, like, even knowing where it goes, it is such a beautifully constructed, extended set piece.
Yeah.
From like, I mean, they've set up the pen like 15, 20 minutes earlier. Mm-hmm. So you see him look at it. Then a full scene later, you see Anthony Held not be able to find his pen.
Yeah.
And then they sit on it for like another 10 minutes before he takes the thing out of his mouth.
Yeah.
It's after he's had the whole Clarice conversation, after he's been transferred, then he takes it out, and then it's just like, how's he fucking going to get out of this? Then to switch over to the SWAT guy perspective.
That's what I love.
That's the beauty.
That takes a while. Like, you really stick with those guys. One of them is an actor I know. Who is it?
It's Chris Isaak. It's Daniel Van Bargen.
There's someone else in there whose face I recognize. I can't remember.
The thing I love about Demme is he lets things breathe.
Yes.
And I feel like so many other movies like this would just be like, bang, bang, bang. Here's some face biting. Right. And like, it takes its time.
The tension of the elevator thing, of all of them realizing like, oh, fuck, guns out, call the battalion, seeing it stop on 3, and then going like, wait, what the fuck is going on?
Right. I also like that you don't see him, rip the guy's skin off.
Yeah.
Just the shot of him taking the skin mask off is enough for you to process like, oh, he did all of that. Oh, that's so, that's all you need. Like, your brain does all the work for you.
But it's such a fine balance of like, and that the body on top, that he switched the clothes, that they think that that's what's going on.
Yeah,
that he's
of course.
Right. All the sort of misdirection stuff. But
they think he did some regular escape stuff, not some skin removal, new face escape stuff.
Right. But
he also basically is putting Buffalo Bill to shame. He jury-rigged a human face in 5 seconds.
When I was talking about how this show is television now, like the X-Files rips off this movie's visual palette, and then every show on CBS rips off the X-Files. So that's why now we live in Silence of the Lambs world.
Yeah.
Right? The thing about television now is it's so graphic and you see so much of the violence.
Yes.
I'm like, that's fine, whatever.
But CSI and Criminal Minds and SVU and all these shows don't exist
zoom
without
into the wound.
Right.
And even X-Files, a show I love, did a lot of that. And this movie, I always forget how non-gory it is.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's crazy because he doesn't sanitize it. Like, he deals with it with the proper weight of, these are horrific things happening, and you can't sugarcoat them. But it is a rare movie of this ilk that does not kind of glamorize and ask you to get some perverse thrill from how fucked up it is.
One of the most horrifying shots in the movie is when he grabs the guy and you have that shot of Hannibal biting the camera essentially, and then you see him kind of biting the guy.
Right.
But in another movie, such as Red Dragon, he would then tear away and blow away some chunk of flesh.
And the guy's face would be so fucked up.
Exactly.
And when they cut back to the guy, he has
a bite wound.
He's got a bite wound. He's got one small bite wound.
It's a little less. I mean, it's the classic horror thing. It's your mind is much more fucked up.
What's scary about it is you don't understand it. It's just this is not normal human interaction.
And that's also right. Charles Napier is just watching it being Jesus Christ.
But even also the way he strikes the physicality. I mean, he's not
a
big
right. That's sort
boy.
But also he's
he's not
dead.
the
dead.
Hulk.
Like he just goes into total robot mode
Yes.
when he's doing the repeated koshing.
The look on his face.
Yeah, the banality
so
of
good.
evil thing. Like, as much as he then likes to like put it in a nice package and like put on a show for them,
Right.
it is the fact that like, you watch something like Mindhunter and it makes it a lot more glamorous than it actually is.
I fucking love Mindhunter.
I'm not saying that in a negative way.
show.
I'm not saying that in a negative way.
Great show.
I'm just
Really
saying
great
it's a different approach.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that this movie does is kind of at times feel like a documentary.
I actually think that Mindhunter is like kind of breaking the Silence of the Lambs thing because it is deliberately saying we don't show stuff.
Yeah, right.
We don't
You
show
don't see
stuff
the murders.
at all.
Right.
It's-
Sure.
That is the show that realizes
It's
that
just the
what was
psychology.
scary about Silence of the Lambs was that conversation is
Right.
terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Conversation is terrifying.
That's a
Being in
good
the
call.
room with a person like this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And also Mindhunter, I think, is just about like me reading a Wikipedia entry late at night of some serial killer. And like you're just sort of like slowly reading it and you're like that's it. Why am I interested in this?
Right.
Why do I want to know more?
Yeah.
And why am I suddenly like so frightened, even though I'm only reading a thing?
Right.
So that weird fascination we have with like, I want to understand why a person would do this or what they did.
It is so beautiful that Clarice ends up being the one to catch him because she is trying to just finish off all the loose ends.
And the fucking fake out.
Yeah.
The thing that should not work. Every time I watch
I
it,
know,
it works.
it's so
And I'm just
good.
like, everybody's ripped it off. Once
Yeah.
you know what's happening, you're like, that's not going to. It
Yeah.
gets me every time.
Yeah,
It's
every
like,
single
yeah.
time.
Yes.
And then one of the greatest action sequences of all time is the night vision sequence.
Yeah, even though it's very brief. Like you think of it as this very long, tense thing.
Yeah.
It's not that long because the concept is so terrifying.
So
the
terrifying.
second he turns on the night vision,
Yeah.
and Demme switches to his perspective, which we've never been in before.
Yes.
Really.
Right.
I mean, I guess a
couple
little
times
bit
with
looking
her.
down at the oblique, but like it's sort of like a jarring switch.
I also love that thing
where you're like, well, I thought I was with my hero. Now I'm watching my poor hero be like stalked in the night.
And the questioning is great leading up to it. The moment where Buffalo Bill realizes that she might catch him and he like stifles a laugh.
Yeah.
Like a really sad laugh.
Their
of, like,
interaction is really interesting.
right. Then goes for the gun and then she goes down to the basement and you have that amazing Brooke Smith scene of her being like, don't worry, I've saved you. And her just being like, fuck you. Get me out of here now. And she's like,
ASAP.
yeah. No, I gotta catch the guy first. And she's like, fuck you, eat shit. Like, she's like, there's no, like, oh my God.
bitch.
Yeah.
Get me out of
She
here.
calls her every bad
Oh,
name.
thank you.
There's
God.
none of that, of course,
I love that a female cop is rescuing me. That feels great. Like
But she's like, you don't get this fucking guy. You're gonna join me in this pit in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Get me.
Now,
And of course, there's the whole sequence where she lures the dog down, which is
Yeah.
It's
her
great.
being
That's
very
the thing
innovative.
is
yeah.
everybody in this movie gets to be smart.
Yes,
Even Buffalo
yeah,
Bill
yeah.
gets to be smart, and it's just like that makes it so much better.
Yes. 100%.
Doesn't the sequence, because we know the space kind of what he lives in, what the basement is like, but when you're actually exploring it in the perspective of the handheld shots,
Yeah.
it is the moths flying
Yeah,
around,
all of it.
ministry
Yeah.
playing in the background.
I love that moth sequence.
Woo! Oh,
That's
yeah.
another classic Demme. Like, I want to look at these guys' faces for a second. I want to understand these people beyond just like exposition dump
Yeah.
people.
Right.
It's like when you'd go to your grandparents' house
When
and
they
you'd go in
look
the
up and they have the
basement, they'd have a
bugs.
bunch of weird shit, and they'd be like, don't get too close to the pit. You'll fall into the pit. Like, yeah. I mean,
And the fact that it's someone else's weird house that he took over and
Yeah.
has put like half of his shit into it, but it's also like half stuff he just hasn't gotten rid of.
yeah, and it's like you see the elements of like there's a map of the U.S. and it's like it's just somebody else hung that
Right.
up
That's
there. It's
another
like, yeah.
life that we don't get any part of.
Right.
Some of the house, I feel like, or some of the design, and I might be wrong, it's Geen. There is
Ed
like
Gein, yes.
they kind of did a little
Yeah.
bit of like touch to
Yeah.
Buffalo
Yeah.
Bill with
Yeah.
incorporating that real
Buffalo
serial
Bill
killer.
is like Ted Bundy and Ed Gein, or like it's some weird combo
Kinda,
of those
yeah,
things. Like
yeah.
he has the Ted Bundy like luring the lady with the cast and all that.
But it is nice that like Clarice solves it independently.
Yes.
Calls Glenn and he's like, we figured it out, but like, good job.
right.
Now just like finish it up, do the follow-up interview.
Right.
But she goes in having accomplished everything on her own. So she is fully loaded to be able to handle the situation.
Right. She's Herbie.
Hypothetically. And then it's just some of the most terrifying shit in the history of cinema.
She's Herbie.
I'm sorry, what?
She's Herbie. She's fully loaded.
Oh, she's fully loaded. Some of the most horrifying shit in the
He was
history
so
of cinema.
proud of that
I
joke.
just
know.
needed
Just-
to get it out.
Yeah, congratulations. It is just like the level of like restraint and sort of like the precision of the timing and the blocking on the Bill's POV through the night vision goggles, reaching out to her face, constantly almost touching her, but missing. And Foster just is like killing that scene.
Right.
I mean, playing the complete as I don't know how they actually shot that.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what she could or couldn't see.
Right.
But she is perfectly playing someone who does not think that the killer is that close to her, but understands that she is at immediate risk.
His hands are out and he's coveting.
I know.
I mean, Buffalo Bill's kind of a turf, if you think about it.
100%. You get your happy ending, she saves.
Oh, then, of course, I'm having a friend for dinner, right? I mean, then there's...
Great closing line.
Totally.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like Hannibal thought of that like 6 years ago. He was like, man, if I ever get out and I get to do an ominous phone call, I'll say that.
But that is the thing that doomed...
Hannibal Lecter wrote this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the thing that doomed the public into thinking they wanted to see 5 more Hannibal movies.
That's true.
Because the ending is such a tee-up, but it's a tee-up for a thing you actually don't want to see him follow through on. That story doesn't really matter.
Not really.
You don't want to see him eat Anthony Held.
That long walk away.
You don't want to see them like hit on the weird romantic undertones. You don't want to see any of that stuff.
Dr. Lecter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That long walk away to me is always just like, I take it as, because he disappears into the crowd.
Yeah.
It's just like, there are monsters among us.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's so effective.
The fact that he never fades to black, the fact that it just stays on and on and on and on. And it's just like somewhere now Hannibal Lecter is existing outside of this frame,
Yes.
getting ready to chow down on people.
And he's got a jaunty little Bahamian hat.
And his wig.
And a wig.
He's got like long
and
hair
sunglasses.
now. Yeah.
So
I feel like
watch out.
Hopkins put that costume on. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this. This is me for the
This
next
is my
30
look.
years. Yeah.
This is my look.
That's like his Twitter account now. It's just him.
What a
His Twitter
guy.
account is incredible.
Okay, box office game?
Let's do it. February 14th, 1991.
I just want to say this is the era when I was paying a lot of attention to the box office. So I might.
Let's see how we do.
Yeah.
This film premiered at the Berlin Film Festival where it won Best Director and then came into theaters. February. It opens number 1, 13 million. Pretty strong opening, adjusted for inflation. That would be 30.
Wow.
You know, so like a good opening. It's President's Day weekend, so it's a 4-day weekend.
And the domestic total is 113?
130,
130.
which
it was a
adjusted
1 and a
is
3.
279. It was a huge hit.
And worldwide, I think it was 279. Like it also did
272 worldwide.
crazy well overseas.
100%.
Yeah.
It's just
Massive
a
hit.
big old hit.
Colossal fucking hit. Okay, so number 1, 13 Silence of the Lambs. Number 2.
Number 2 is it was number 1 the previous week when it came out. Was a huge hit of the year that I feel like is now forgotten. And it was
Ben
like
shrugging.
big movie star going
Ben
serious.
has no idea what it is. It's a big movie star, but he had not gone serious before. She had not gone serious before.
I mean, not in a leading role. She was seen as more of a comedy actress, I feel like, and this is her being
Is
like,
this an Oscar?
I can be in a
player?
thriller. No.
Okay, she was seen as a comedy actress, and now she's going to be in a thriller. And it's
Oh,
not,
you know
It's not
what?
Whoopi.
No,
I didn't realize this movie was serious, but is it a bird on a wire?
it is not.
Fuck.
But is it Goldie?
No.
Huh. But is it someone of a Goldie ilk? Is it that kind of comedy actress?
I mean, in terms of that she'd been in some rom-coms, yes.
Is it Meg Ryan?
No.
Is it Julia? Julia Roberts?
Sleeping with the Enemy?
Correct. Final
we go.
total on Sleeping with the Enemy, please.
90?
101. Wow. Huge hit.
Wow.
A movie really forgotten. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people do not remember Sleeping with the
I
Enemy.
genuinely thought that came out later that year.
Eighth biggest film of the year.
Wow.
Huge hit.
Yeah, huge.
Time for a Sleeping with the Enemy remake.
And, you know, the other, yes, there.
It's going to be on Quibi, I'm sure.
You can only watch it at night.
Like the other big
wait.
hits of the year, Terminator 2, Robin Hood,
Right.
Beauty and the Beast, Sounds of the Lambs, City Slickers, Hook, The Addams Family,
Weird.
right? But like all of those movies have at least some cultural tale, right?
Right. This is
Sleeping with the Enemy
year.
is the number 8, and it's sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I remember that movie
You
existed.
talk about like things being cyclical and culture always being this way. This is a perfect example of a year where like almost everything is some sort of reboot or sequel
or adaptation or something.
adaptation.
Yeah.
Right.
Because then you have Father of the Bride, Naked Gun, 2.5, like you know the big hits of the year. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Right.
God, I saw all these fucking
Cape
movies.
Fear, which is a remake.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
like that's like a hoity-toity remake.
Right.
Star Trek 6.
Right.
You know.
Crazy.
The Prince of Tides, which of course was based on a DC comic.
That was based on Sega Genesis.
Yeah. It's actually weirdly an adaptation of Golden Axe. Just no one ever talks about that.
It's based on the trading card series by Topps.
Now, number 3.
Okay.
Is a new entry this week. It is a film we have long discussed doing on this podcast.
Ben is it King Ralph?
It is King Ralph.
Ben was pumping his fist. I knew it had to be Ralph.
John Goodman was the King of England.
Yeah. I was literally going to make a King Ralph reference earlier in this podcast. I was like, I don't want to take that from Ben. I was like, that's King Ralph.
It's such a good movie.
One of these days we'll
here's the
it's
thing.
my aesthetic because I don't like snooty people.
You hate them.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I don't like them. I don't like aristocrats. I don't like people who are bullies because, you're not as smart as them.
Right.
And King Ralph's
here
he
to
goes
make
in
things
there
right.
and he's like, I like rock and roll and I like sandwiches and y'all are weird.
You like big guys named Ralph. That's your favorite movie
That's
genre.
true. That's true.
Ben, Queeby's calling me right now. They want to know if you want to be King Ralph in the King Ralph series.
As long as it's a documentary and I go and I kick the queen out of her chair. Get out of here.
Here's the thing I want to say about King Ralph's poster. A lot of things I love here.
Okay.
One, the billing. John Goodman, Peter O'Toole. Great billing. Yes. That O'Toole made it to the poster, but he has to be below.
It's only 2,
Goodman.
though. Right.
2, it's a classic double tagline. One tagline explaining, and 2 is a proper tagline.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where it's this, where they're like, this is too complicated. We need a tagline that explains.
Those taglines are like, 2 weeks ago, John Lawrence was a normal lawyer.
Exactly. So the regular tagline is the tagline you'd expect. A comedy of majestic proportions. Not a good tagline, but at least like, okay. It's like a cute comedy.
Wash your fucking mouth. It's a great tagline.
Very good.
But now here's the top tagline.
Okay.
Not so funny. Here it is.
Yeah.
A great tragedy has befallen the royal family, leaving only one heir to the throne. Not so funny. I'm not laughing.
You don't think it's a smart business practice to sell your comedy by saying a great tragedy?
But no, so here, if you're following, as I believe these poster people sort of figure out, like how your eyes would move across.
Yeah.
So you're like Goodman and O'Toole. You're like, Then great tragedy. You're like, uh-oh. But then your eye scans across. Now here's the Queen's crown.
Yeah.
But it's atop the head of Goodman. And he's wearing a shirt that says, and I quote, Las Vegas. And it has a couple of dice on it.
I hate what I'm about to do. But David, you seemed kind of broken up about the thought of the royal family dying.
Oh, Jesus.
What's up with that?
Yeah, you seem weirdly invested in a thing just because you've seen it in a movie.
Tragedy has befallen the royal family. Like, what if I'd had like a sort of
But I mean, David, come on.
inadvertent gasp.
This is true. It would be sad. We'd be sad.
We'd be sad. Oh, look, we all would be sad.
You can get it real big. Yeah, I grew up in
David.
England.
I was going to draw it out.
You mean
longer,
I didn't want you to.
Okay, number 4 at the box office.
Numbers 4 and 5 at the box office are 2 of the giant hits of 1990.
Okay.
One won Best Picture, and one I think was probably the biggest movie of 1990.
Got to be Dances with Wolves and Home Alone.
That's correct.
There we go.
In that order?
No, Home Alone, then Dances with Wolves, which are respectively 14 and 15 weeks into their runs. Home Alone, can you tell me the final total?
The final total of Home Alone was 220.
285.
That makes no sense.
Which adjusted for inflation is $600 million. It's a lot of money.
It's Infinity War.
Yeah, right.
You know,
adjusted for inflation, Home Alone.
What if the Wet Bandits were in the new Avengers?
Disney owns that movie now. Kevin Feige should make it.
He should get Pesci. Pesci's back. Clearly loves working all the time. Definitely isn't baffled by questions such as like, what's it like to not have been in a movie for 10 years?
I was going to say, the only thing he loves more than being in movies again is talking about those movies. They're Disney Plusing Home Alone. They're bringing it back.
And they are Disney Plusing 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag. Some of the other movies.
No, you're David. I'm sorry. That's going on Pesci Plus.
Pesci Plus. Gone Fishing Again. 9 Heads in a Duffel Bag. My aunt? I don't know. Oh, shit. I could have had a third good dumb
My
Pesci
Aunt Sheila.
sequel. My Aunt Sheila.
Hey.
That's another Pesci movie.
My Aunt Vinny is transculture.
Yeah.
Please don't joke about it.
That is true.
Maybe that's what Pesci wants to go
That
for.
is true. Pesci Plus.
Pesci's the only cis man still allowed to play a trans woman. I have decreed it. I speak for the community.
Just because it's like, well, Pesci's in a movie, let's just give him some room. Right. It just so rarely works.
You're like, whatever it takes. We got to get him back up on that screen.
Some other big movies. Okay. You got LA Story. You got Neverending Story 2. So 2 stories.
LA Story is a good movie.
Yeah. Never seen it.
Yeah, very good movie.
You have Nothing But Trouble opening this week. Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd bomb.
Yeah.
You have White Fang, which I remember watching on video as a kid and being kind of freaked out by.
Yeah.
And Awakenings, another Oscar holdover.
Yes, a weird film. Yeah. Emily, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're the best in the biz. Primetime?
Primetime, we're, I can't say right now, we're working on, we have a season 2, we're pitching out to get sponsors and stuff.
So there is a season 2 in the works. You cannot say what it is or when it will be coming out.
My hope is that I will be able to say what it is when this episode drops, and I'll do that on Twitter at TVOTI.
Hell fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the best follows on the internet. And also, this is a great place to plug that I Think You're Interesting is coming back as a series exclusively made up of Jay Leno.
Just talking to Jay Leno.
Right.
No, I also have a book about the X-Files, a show that I talked about earlier.
Monster of the Week.
Monsters of the Week, the complete critical companion to the X-Files. And the real reason I'm here, my scripted show, Arden, is started season 2, December 30th. We hope. We haven't recorded anything yet, and this is early October. So,
podcast.
Yeah, but it's a podcast.
Arden.
Yeah, Arden. It was in season 2 right now, so please go listen to that.
Check it out.
True
Great
crime,
stuff.
fun.
Best in the biz.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
You're talking about yourself,
True.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the divine producer, Am.
You won several Poddy Awards, right? For Best Podcaster?
I'd rather not talk about this. I made the mistake of campaigning as supporting.
It's like a...
But if we missed anything, listeners...
Sure.
It's that time of year we need some ratings, some reviews.
Oh!
So... why not, instead of tweeting at us, and of course you can still do it if you prefer, but as a fun
outside is
bit,
frightening.
Perhaps maybe
but the
leaving
iTunes rating is
a little rating of what we missed.
Can I make
and
one
of course,
last...
give us 5 stars.
Can I make one last pitch to the listeners?
Please.
I know March Madness is coming up. This is coming out in January.
Yeah.
I know you guys are thinking about what that lineup is. I don't know what's going to be in it. My wife, Libby Hill, TV Awards editor, IndieWire, has made it a goal of her life to be on every movie podcast talking about Bicentennial Man. And
so Columbus wins.
He was in our bracket last year.
Please vote Chris Columbus, listeners. I want to make my life's wife hell because she will have to watch Bicentennial Man dozens of times.
One of the most unpleasant movies to watch.
Yeah,
truly.
Just one of those movies where like your eye just kind of slips off the screen, where you're like, this is still going on.
But also, you constantly feel like there are ants crawling on your skin. Like somehow watching it makes you feel like physically like jittery.
So if you want my wife Libby Hill to be on this podcast to just be like, Griffin, why are you talking about this right now?
I want that more than anything.
Vote Columbus, Bicentennial Man, baby.
Next week, Philadelphia.
That's right.
We're heading to the, I don't know, whatever. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. I was going to try to say something funny and my brain just fizzled out.
It happens.
Thanks to Andrew Good for our social media. Lane Montgomery for our theme song. Joe Bun and Pat Rounds for our artwork. Go to blankies.reddit.com for some real
say
nerdy
something
shit.
about like a cheesesteak.
I was thinking, but I couldn't put the math together fast enough. I'm no good while hunting. Go to buy shirts and Patreon. Around this time, maybe right before, right after this, we'll be releasing our official performance review of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Wow. Not since the Star Wars days. Gethard is coming on with us, and we're going to review every credited character in Endgame.
And I'm sure talk about Kit Fisto.
Probably a ton. Check that out. As always, Jay Leno slides into DMs like Giff. Can I do something very unexpected?
Yeah, sure.
A little merchandise spotlight?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so in the late 1990s, Todd McFarlane, he of the comic books, first Marvel. Yeah, but then eventually creates
Image
Spawn,
Comics, yes.
founds Image, becomes
weirdly
creator.
owns the Edmonton Oilers maybe or something like that.
Huge fan of hockey. Also, at one point in time, owned both Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire's record-breaking home run balls.
Weird.
He bought the balls.
Yeah.
He lost them. He had to sell them because he named a pedophile mobster character in a Spawn comic after a hockey player because he's such a big hockey fan. He was like, oh, fun Easter egg. And then the guy sued him for defamation. And he had to pay the guy like tens of millions of dollars, so he had to sell his baseballs.
Carry on.
Was very obsessed with Todd McFarlane as a young man, largely because at the peak of Spawn's like cultural relevance, all the toy companies wanted to get the rights to Spawn, and he was like, fuck you, you guys suck, I'm starting my own toy company.
Yes.
And everyone's like, this is stupid, you're going to fail. And it succeeded
Big hit.
wildly.
Yes.
And the Spawn toys sold really well, but the thing that pushed him over the edge was he started a line called Movie Maniacs that was, what if you took all the interesting characters in adult films who toy companies have been afraid to touch, but also who are the only visually interesting character in a movie. So you couldn't make an entire toy line off of that movie, but you can put them all in as a grab bag.
Okay.
So he did a series that was like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Leatherface.
Sure.
When Michael Myers, I think, was maybe in the first batch.
Whatever.
That then became one of the 10 greatest selling toy lines of the year, along with like Hot Wheels and Barbie and shit.
Yes.
So immediately people were like, Hannibal.
Right.
And for years and years, everyone was trying to get Hannibal, and no one could because Hopkins was like, I don't want to be a toy. Like Hopkins was like always shutting it down. And it was like 10 plus years of wind up until someone was able to make not McFarlane, but people who had left McFarlane and started their own company, 2 Hannibal Lecter figures, one on the stretcher, one which is really unsettling of Hannibal with the Billy Club being able to attack the guy, Jesus Christ. But the thing I want to show you folks.
This is that one.
That's that one.
Yep.
Comes with the little cell. The thing I want to show you folks that I find very funny is the series of Mini-Mates, which are Lego-esque figures. Of the Silence of the Lambs crew.
Hannibal Lecter got to get a Funko Pop.
I mean, you talk about the iconography.
He doesn't have one?
I think
Mads Mikkelsen does. Mads Mikkelsen does.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
But these are the Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's Clarice.
Okay.
It does speak to how sort of iconic every character in the movie is, that they can be recognized even in this form. Here's Buffalo Bill holding a moth with a painted-on nipple ring. And then Hannibal.
These are bizarre. I don't like
so
these.
There's that.
Hannibal looks a lot like Nixon.
It does.
He does look like Nixon.
David.
Yeah,
it looks like your best friend.
I would like to add to the merchandise spotlight.
There is now a Funko Hannibal.
It's him on the gurney with the mask. Yeah, makes sense.
I've always wanted Buffalo Bill's necklace. If everyone knows where I could get that necklace, I think it looks cool. That's it.
Great.